Before we drift away, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more calming sleep stories. Sweet dreams await. The rain had begun to fall as soon as you stepped out of your car, the sharp, cold droplets quickly soaking through your jacket. You weren't sure what had possessed you to drive so far into the heart of the forest, but the lodge, the one you had booked for the weekend, wasn't far now. The winding path you followed seemed endless, cutting through dense trees that pressed in on all sides, their thick branches almost appearing to reach down toward the ground. The road was slick, and the forest felt alive, a constant whisper of wind moving through the leaves, mixing with the quiet patter of rain. In the distance, you could see the dim glow of the lodge's lights flickering through the mist. It was an old building, nestled deep in the woods, but there was something oddly comforting about it, as though it had seen decades of travelers and listened to their stories without ever uttering a word in return. When you finally reached the lodge, the heavy wooden door creaked open as you approached. The inside was dimly lit by a fire crackling in the hearth, casting long shadows on the walls. The scent of damp earth and pine mingled with the warmth of the fire. An old man, the keeper of the lodge, greeted you with a soft smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "You've come for peace and quiet," he said, his voice low and raspy. "You'll find it here. But the forest, it can be unpredictable. It has a way of pulling people in." You nodded, unsure of how to respond, the chill from the rain still lingering on your skin. "I'll leave you to get settled," the old man continued, his eyes following you as you entered. "But remember, the campfire out back is always ready for a story or two, if you're brave enough." The door closed behind him with a faint thud, and you were left standing in the lodge's cozy entryway, the fire warming your hands. The room was quiet, save for the crackle of the flames and the soft sound of rain tapping against the windows. Curiosity pulled at you, but something else lingered in the back of your mind, like a whisper just out of reach. The forest beyond the lodge felt darker now, the shadows stretching longer as if something was watching, waiting. The rain had picked up again, and the wind was howling through the trees, sending the scent of damp pine deep into the lodge. You couldn't ignore the feeling that someone, was just beyond the trees calling you. You weren't sure whether to ignore it or embrace it. Either way, tonight was going to be a long one. The wind outside was louder now, howling through the branches like a chorus of lost voices. You sat by the fire for a moment, letting its warmth chase away the damp chill that had crept into your bones. The room around you was filled with the scent of burning wood, mixed with the earthy undertone of the forest beyond. The old man's words still echoed in your mind. The forest has a way of pulling people in. There was something unsettling about that. It wasn't just the strange tone of his voice, nor the fact that he had seemed to know exactly why you had come here. There was a deeper, older knowledge in his gaze, as though he had seen this all before. Shaking off the unease, you decided to explore the lodge a little. It was much older than you had expected, its wooden beams groaning with the weight of time. The walls were covered with old photographs, faded with age. In some of them, the lodge looked the same, while in others, the people who had stayed here seemed different. Their eyes were wide, almost too bright, as if they had seen something that had changed them forever. You couldn't help but linger in front of one photograph. A group of men and women, all standing together on the steps of the lodge, but there was something wrong about their smiles, something too perfect, too still. They looked like a snapshot taken in the middle of a moment, as if they were frozen, waiting for something to happen. You stepped closer to get a better look when the sound of footsteps caught your attention. Turning, you found the old man standing at the threshold of the room, watching you with that same unreadable look. "You found the photographs," he said softly, his voice barely rising above the crackle of the fire. "They tell the stories of the ones who've stayed here. Some leave, some don't." His words hit you like a cold gust of wind. You couldn't tell whether he was simply making conversation or issuing a warning, but either way, something inside you shifted. The urge to explore the rest of the lodge was suddenly overpowering. The strange, hollow feeling in the pit of your stomach told you that this place was more than it seemed. The old man stood there for a moment longer before turning away, disappearing down the hallway without another word. You stood in the dim light of the lodge, feeling a chill creep up your spine. Something was wrong. You couldn't shake the feeling that the lodge was waiting for you, that the forest beyond the windows was calling to you. You thought of the campfire, how the old man had mentioned it as a place for stories. A flicker of curiosity overpowered your growing discomfort. Maybe, just maybe, there was something to be discovered out there, something that could make sense of the strange energy in the air. The rain had lightened, but the wind still howled through the trees, twisting the branches into grotesque shapes. You grabbed your jacket, wrapping it tightly around yourself, and stepped outside. The path leading to the campfire was narrow and winding, flanked by towering trees whose twisted trunks seemed to move in the flickering shadows. The air felt thick here, heavy with the smell of wet soil and decaying leaves. The firelight from the campfire flickered in the distance, casting long shadows across the forest floor. When you reached the clearing, the campfire was already crackling, its flames dancing against the night. But there was no sign of the old man, only the fire. You stood there for a moment, unsure of what to do. The silence felt almost oppressive, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. The wind had died down, leaving only the soft rustling of the leaves in its wake. The fire's warmth did little to ease the chill that had settled into your bones. As you circled the fire, your eyes caught something strange. A pile of old, weathered stones, arranged in a perfect circle just beyond the flames. At first, you thought it was some sort of ritualistic symbol, but as you drew closer, you noticed something even stranger. A mark. A symbol carved deeply into the largest stone. It was almost impossible to make out, as though it had been etched there by something far older than the lodge. You knelt down to examine it more closely, the flame casting eerie shadows over the carved shape. The symbol looked like a twisted, spiraling vine, intertwined with what looked like faces. Faces frozen in time, their expressions filled with something between agony and peace. A sound behind you made you jump. You spun around, your heart racing in your chest, but there was no one there. The wind had returned, and the trees swayed, their limbs reaching out to each other like ancient hands. The only sound was the crackle of the fire and the distant hum of the forest. For a brief moment, you felt the eyes of something watching you, hidden in the darkness. You stood up, a sense of unease crawling up your spine. The air felt heavier now, as if the world around you had grown denser, more alive. You turned toward the lodge, but a movement caught your eye. There, at the edge of the clearing, just beyond the reach of the firelight, stood a figure. At first, you thought it was just a trick of the shadows, but then the figure stepped closer, the shape becoming more defined. It was a person. You couldn't make out any details in the dim light, but the figure was tall, cloaked in dark fabric, the hood pulled low over their face. A strange, unsettling feeling washed over you, and you felt your legs freeze in place, unable to move or speak. The figure didn't approach, but simply stood there, watching you with an air of quiet expectation. You swallowed, your mouth dry, and took a tentative step forward. And then, just as quickly as the figure had appeared, it turned and vanished into the trees, swallowed by the darkness. You stood in the clearing, your breath catching in your throat, the weight of the moment pressing on you. The forest had changed. The wind had picked up again, and the trees seemed to bend and twist in a strange dance. Something was out there, something that was watching, something that was waiting. And whatever it wasn't going to let you leave. You stood frozen in the clearing, the dark figure still lingering in your thoughts. The fire crackled and spat, the embers sending brief sparks into the night, but the warmth it offered seemed distant now. The forest beyond the campfire flickered and swayed in strange rhythms, like a heartbeat in sync with the anxious thumping in your chest. The figure had vanished as swiftly as it had appeared, leaving you alone with only the whisper of the wind and the steady beat of the rain, now coming down heavier again. The distant sound of thunder rolled through the trees, distant and ominous, as though the storm was only a prelude to something much darker. Your instincts screamed at you to leave the clearing, to rush back to the lodge where it felt safe, but something held you in place. A sudden, sharp rustling from the underbrush cut through the silence. You whipped around, your pulse quickening. The shadows behind you seemed to deepen, thickening, closing in, but there was nothing there. Just the trees, their branches swaying, their leaves rustling softly in the wind. Your eyes darted back to the lodge, now barely visible through the thick curtain of rain and fog. It felt so far away, the glow of its warm lights nothing more than a beacon lost in the storm. The hairs on the back of your neck stood on end. Something was wrong with the air tonight, and you couldn't quite figure out why. As if on cue, a voice broke the stillness. Low, barely a whisper, yet so clear it sent a cold shiver down your spine. Don't go back to the lodge. Stay here. The fire knows. You spun around, your heart racing, but there was no one there. Only the dark, still figure of the trees, their gnarled forms reaching out like twisted hands in the dim light. You were sure you had heard it. The voice had been so distinct, as if it had come from just behind you. The words echoed in your mind. Stay here? The fire knows? You turned back toward the campfire, almost against your will. Its light was warm, inviting, but there was something unnatural about it. As if the flames had grown just a little brighter, more intense, their crackling sound almost too loud. A sharp gust of wind stirred the flames, sending the firelight twisting and flickering wildly. For a moment, the fire seemed to dance in strange patterns as though it was alive, moving with purpose. Suddenly, the fire flared, its light intensifying for a brief moment, casting long, twisted shadows across the clearing. And then it snapped back to normal, leaving an eerie calm in its wake. A sense of dread settled over you. You couldn't explain it, but you knew you were no longer alone. The air around you had thickened, weighed down by the presence of something unseen. The forest, which had once felt like a distant companion, now felt like a hostile entity. The trees loomed larger, their branches shaking as though they were alive, whispering to each other in languages you couldn't understand. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, the whispering grew louder, more frantic. Don't trust it. The fire, it's not what you think. You spun around again looking for the source, but there was no one. No figure, no movement. Just the heavy, oppressive silence of the forest and the sound of the rain. The darkness seemed deeper now, more enveloping, pressing in from all sides. You could feel the weight of it on your chest, suffocating you. You had to get back to the lodge. You couldn't stay out here alone, not like this. The forest had been beckoning you, but now it felt like it was closing in, as if it had claimed its hold on you. The rain had soaked through your jacket, and the cold had begun to seep into your bones. Your breath came in short bursts, misting in the air, as the fear that had been gnawing at the edges of your mind suddenly gripped you with full force. You took a step backward, then another, until your foot caught on something hidden in the underbrush. You stumbled, barely catching yourself, but the force of the fall knocked you off balance. As you scrambled to get up, your eyes caught something on the ground, something old, something out of place. You reached for it instinctively, your hand trembling as you lifted a small, worn object from the muddy earth. A necklace. The chain was tarnished with age, and the pendant was an intricate carving of a twisted tree. You turned it over in your hand, feeling a strange warmth radiate from it despite the cold night. The more you looked at it, the more it felt like it belonged here, as though it had been waiting for you to find it. A rustling sound broke your thoughts. It was closer this time, sharp and deliberate. You spun around, clutching the necklace tightly, but again there was nothing. The forest was still. Too still. Your heart pounded in your chest as you stood there, the necklace now seeming heavier in your hand. It felt like a tether, pulling you back toward the campfire, toward something you couldn't fully understand. But you couldn't shake the feeling that the fire was not what it seemed. You felt its warmth tug at you, inviting you closer, but something inside you screamed to run, to leave it behind. You turned your gaze toward the lodge, a dark silhouette against the misty rain. It felt so distant now, the warm light from the windows now a faint memory. But that was where the old man had told you to go, wasn't it? Stay here. The fire knows. The words repeated in your head, a mantra, a warning. With a deep breath, you took one last look at the clearing, the fire, the necklace, and the trees looming above. A strange weight lifted as you turned toward the path back to the lodge, but the whispering voice stayed with you, a constant presence in the back of your mind. And you couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was out there, waiting in the dark, had its eyes on you. The path back to the lodge felt longer than it had before. Each step you took seemed to echo through the trees, the sound muffled by the thick carpet of wet leaves underfoot. The rain was coming down in sheets now, blurring the world around you. The trees, tall and imposing, towered over you like ancient sentinels, their branches reaching down like fingers, brushing against your skin with each gust of wind. The chill in the air wrapped around you like a heavy blanket, seeping into your bones. You quickened your pace, the uneasy feeling growing heavier with every step. The forest around you felt alive more so than before. The whispering that had plagued you near the fire was gone now, replaced by the sound of your own breath, the rain, and the occasional creak of the trees as they swayed in the wind. But even with that, you couldn't shake the sensation of being watched, of something unseen moving just out of sight. It was as if the forest itself was breathing with you, its pulse quickening with each step you took. As you neared the lodge, the trees seemed to draw back as though parting for you, giving you space to pass. The light from the windows of the lodge flickered through the fog, warm and welcoming, but you couldn't ignore the sense of unease that washed over you. It felt like you were walking into something you didn't fully understand, something far darker than you had anticipated. The door to the lodge swung open as if it had been waiting for you, the warm glow from inside spilling out into the rain-soaked night. You stepped inside quickly, shaking off the dampness of the storm, and closed the door behind you with a soft thud. The air inside was different. Warm, yes, but thick with something else, something hard to place. The smell of pine from the fire mingled with something else, something faintly metallic like the taste of blood on the back of your tongue. You shivered and glanced around the entryway, half expecting to see the old man standing there, watching you. But there was no sign of him. The place felt empty, yet somehow not empty. Your eyes were drawn to the fireplace at the far end of the room. The fire crackled merrily, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch unnaturally far. The flickering light danced across the wooden walls, highlighting the faded photographs you had seen earlier. There was that strange sensation again, the feeling that the photographs were watching you. You shook your head, trying to dismiss it. You couldn't stay in the entryway forever. The unsettling silence in the lodge pressed in on you, urging you forward. The living room beckoned with its worn leather chairs and the thick, soft carpet that promised comfort, but you didn't feel comfortable. You felt off. Like something was about to happen, like you were on the cusp of some terrible revelation. With cautious steps, you made your way deeper into the lodge. The fire crackled behind you, but it felt distant now, as though it were no longer a source of warmth. The walls seemed to close in as you moved further inside. You reached the hallway, where the air grew even colder, as though a draft had begun to flow through the walls. A sharp sound echoed in the distance. Footsteps, slow and deliberate. Your heart skipped a beat. "The old man?" You called out, your voice breaking the silence, but there was no response. Only the heavy thudding of your own pulse in your ears. You took a deep breath and walked toward the sound, the hallway twisting before you, leading deeper into the bowels of the lodge. As you approached the source of the footsteps, you felt the hairs on the back of your neck stand on end. The hallway seemed longer now, stretched out, as if the walls themselves were breathing. Every footstep you took seemed to sink deeper into the lodge, the floor creaking with each movement. The faint smell of pine and damp earth grew stronger the further you went. And then, at the end of the hall, you saw it. A door slightly ajar. Light flickered from within, casting a strange, sickly glow. The source of the footsteps. You hesitated, the dread building inside you, but your curiosity, your need to understand what was happening here, drove you forward. You reached out and pushed the door open with trembling hands. Inside, the room was dim, lit only by the pale flicker of the firelight from the hearth. The old man was there, sitting in a chair by the fire, his face shadowed in the gloom. His posture was unnervingly still, as though he were waiting for something, or someone. "You've come," he said softly, his voice barely more than a whisper. "I wondered how long it would take for you to figure it out." The words hit you like a punch to the gut. You hadn't realized it, but you had been expecting him, expecting some sort of explanation, some sort of understanding. But this was more than you had bargained for. Figure what out? Your voice trembled as you spoke. The question felt stupid the moment you said it. You knew exactly what was going on. The lodge, the forest, the voices, the whispers. It was all part of the same twisted puzzle. And you were trapped inside it. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked into the fire, his eyes distant, almost vacant. There was something different about him now, something cold. He seemed older than you remembered, his face wrinkled, his eyes sunken and tired. "The forest calls," he said almost to himself. "It always calls. But it's not the trees you should fear. It's what lies beneath them. The fire, it holds them back. But it won't last forever." A shiver ran down your spine. What was he talking about? What did he mean by what lies beneath? The fire had felt strange earlier, as though it were more than just a flame. Could it be the key to all of this? Before you could speak again, the room seemed to grow colder, and the fire flickered in a way that sent a chill through your chest. You stepped forward, but as you did, the shadows in the corner of the room shifted. A figure, cloaked in darkness, stood just beyond the firelight. The figure was tall, its form draped in what looked like tattered robes, but its face was nothing but a dark void, a gaping blackness that seemed to swallow the light. Its eyes, if they could be called eyes, gleamed with a faint, unnatural glow, staring at you as if it could see straight through to your soul. The old man didn't move, his eyes fixed on the fire. He didn't acknowledge the figure standing in the shadows, but you felt its presence as if it were closing in on you. A whisper, low and guttural, slipped from the figure's lips. "The forest calls. The fire will not save you." The figure in the corner of the room was like a nightmare that had taken shape in the dark. Its eyes, those glowing empty eyes, seemed to pierce right through you, bypassing the physical world and delving straight into your mind, into your thoughts. It was as though it could read your deepest fears and was feeding on them, savoring every moment of your unease. You froze. The old man remained completely still, his attention locked on the fire as if nothing were happening, as if the figure wasn't standing there watching you. Your heart hammered in your chest, every muscle in your body tensed, but you couldn't move. You didn't even know if you wanted to move. The pull of the figure in the shadows was hypnotic, almost as if it were beckoning you, urging you forward, tempting you with promises you couldn't understand. The whisper came again, closer this time, its voice like a rasping breath, barely audible above the crackling fire. "You are not meant to be here." This place does not welcome you. The words seemed to stir the air around you, thickening it, wrapping it around you like a suffocating fog. You felt the weight of them, felt them pressing down on you, bending you, making it harder and harder to breathe. And yet, you found yourself moving. Your legs carried you closer to the fire, closer to the figure. You didn't ask how or why. It was as though your body had already made the decision, as if something inside you had taken control, and your mind was now simply along for the ride. The closer you got, the more you felt the temperature drop. The fire, once warm and inviting, now felt like a barrier. The flames were brighter, more intense, casting erratic shadows that stretched and twisted, making the room seem even larger, more cavernous. The figure in the corner didn't move, but its presence grew stronger, its form more distinct with each step you took. When you were just a few feet from the fire, the old man's voice broke the silence. "You think you're safe," he muttered, not looking at you. "But the fire cannot protect you. It never has. The forest doesn't let go." You glanced at him, but his face remained unchanged, as if the figure and the fire were nothing more than passing moments to him. But you knew differently. There was something in his eyes, a flicker of fear, or maybe regret, that you had only just noticed. Something had happened here. Something had gone terribly wrong. A crackling sound erupted from the fire, louder than before, and for a brief, terrifying moment, the flames flared up, casting everything in the room in sharp, bloody light. In that instant, the figure seemed to move. Its shadowed limbs shifted in the firelight, but its body remained rooted to the ground, a dark, twisted form that looked as though it had been pulled from the very fabric of nightmares. "It is already too late," the figure whispered again, its voice now louder, clearer, more commanding. The sound seemed to echo around the room, bouncing off the walls, vibrating through your bones. And then, as suddenly as the moment had escalated, everything fell quiet. The figure in the corner no longer whispered. Its eyes, if you could even call them eyes, were fixed on you, watching with an unnerving stillness. You took a step back, but your feet were suddenly rooted to the ground. The fire's heat was overwhelming now, almost unbearable, and yet the air around you was freezing, so cold that you could see your breath hanging in the air like a cloud of smoke. The old man turned his head toward you for the first time, his eyes narrowing. His expression was no longer one of indifference. Now it was something darker, filled with a kind of grim resignation. "You shouldn't have come," he said, his voice like gravel, heavy with regret. "I tried to warn you, but you wouldn't listen. The forest, this place, it doesn't just take people. It traps them." The words hit you like a slap in the face, and for a moment, everything around you seemed to blur, the fire becoming a chaotic swirl of orange and red, the shadows of the trees pressing in on you from every direction. "What is this place?" you asked, your voice barely a whisper. The old man's gaze softened, but it wasn't a comforting softness. It was the softness of someone who had long ago given up on hope, someone who had watched too many people come and go, only to be consumed by whatever it was that lingered in these woods. "This lodge," he said, his voice quieter now, almost a confession, "was built on land older than you can imagine. The forest, it has a pulse, a rhythm. It calls to the lost, to those who wander too far. And once it claims you, it doesn't let go. Not until it's ready." Your eyes darted to the figure in the corner, which was still watching you with its empty gaze. It hadn't moved, but its presence had grown stronger, almost suffocating. "But the fire," you stammered, your throat dry. "What about the fire? You said it would keep us safe." The old man's lips curled into a grim, humorless smile. "The fire is a barrier, yes. It keeps the worst of it at bay. But the fire is fading. And when it goes out..." His voice trailed off, and his gaze shifted toward the flames, his eyes clouded with a mixture of sorrow and fear. "You'll see. You'll understand." You didn't have time to ask what he meant. The room was suddenly plunged into darkness, the fire sputtering and cracking, flickering in its dying moments. Your heart raced as the temperature dropped further, the cold now unbearable, biting at your skin, sinking into your very bones. The figure in the corner moved. Slowly at first, but then faster, its limbs jerking unnaturally, its body bending and contorting in grotesque ways that made you want to look away but you couldn't. Its face, or what passed for a face, stretched into something that was neither human nor creature, a mass of shifting shadows and gaping, endless voids. And then it was standing before you. You wanted to scream, to run, but your body wouldn't move. The air around you had thickened, turning to syrup, weighing you down, suffocating you. The figure's hand, if it could even be called a hand, reached out toward you, fingers long and jagged, each one like a shard of obsidian, sharp and deadly. You felt its presence fill you, creeping into your thoughts, your very soul. "You are mine now," it whispered, "and the forest will never let you go." The fire, in its final moments, flared one last time, its light illuminating the figure's face, and for the first time, you saw its eyes. Endless, black pools of nothingness. And in that moment, you understood the truth of the lodge, of the forest, and of the nightmare that had already begun to consume you. The figure's hand hovered inches from your face, and in that moment, every instinct screamed at you to move, to run, to do anything, but your body refused to obey. It was as if the very air around you had thickened, turned to stone, and you were trapped in a nightmare you couldn't escape. "You are mine now," the figure repeated, its voice growing deeper, vibrating through your chest like the rumbling of thunder. The darkness in its eyes expanded, swirling like a vortex, drawing you in, pulling at the very essence of who you were. The shadows behind it writhed, distorting the air, twisting the very fabric of reality around you. Your breath caught in your throat. The fire behind you was barely a whisper now, its last embers sputtering and dying with a hiss. The room was plunged into darkness, the cold now suffocating. For the briefest moment, you felt the presence of something else in the room, a flicker of motion in the corner of your eye. It was gone before you could fully register it, but you knew deep down that it wasn't just the figure before you. Something more was happening, something that you had only begun to understand. The cold intensified, biting through your clothes, sinking into your skin as if the lodge itself had turned against you. The walls groaned, the wooden beams creaking like the bones of some ancient creature waking from a long slumber. You could hear the wind howling outside, but it no longer felt like a storm. It felt like a force, a presence, a living thing that wanted to swallow you whole. And then, as if in answer to the unspoken terror rising in your chest, the figure stepped forward. You couldn't move. The hand that had once hovered now brushed against your cheek, the coldness of it sending a wave of dread through you. It was as if the touch didn't belong to any living creature, but rather something ancient, something that had existed long before the lodge had been built, long before the forest had risen. Something that had always been waiting, just beyond the veil of human understanding. "The forest is alive," the figure whispered, its voice no longer distant, but inside your mind, weaving through your thoughts, crawling through your memories. "It feeds on the lost. It feeds on those who wander too far. But it's not just the forest you should fear." Your pulse raced as the air grew thicker, denser, heavier. The figure's hand slid down your cheek, its fingers tracing a path along your jaw. You wanted to pull away, to scream, but your voice was gone, swallowed by the weight of the presence in the room. "It is the fire you must fear," it continued. "The fire is not what you think it is. It is the last threat, the final barrier. Once it dies, once it fades, the forest will claim what is rightfully its. And you will never leave." The room seemed to spin, the shadows growing longer, more twisted. The walls pulsed like the beating of a heart, as if the entire lodge itself were alive, its structure breathing with a life of its own. The fire was no longer a comforting warmth, but a dying flicker, struggling against the darkness that had taken hold. And then, in that moment of growing chaos, the door at the far end of the room opened. The figure stepped back, its attention momentarily drawn to the doorway. You heard it before you saw it, a low, guttural sound like the groan of a dying beast coming from beyond the door. It was the sound of something moving through the lodge, something heavy, something that didn't belong. The old man emerged from the shadows, his face pale, drawn, his eyes wide with terror. He was muttering something under his breath, a string of words you couldn't quite understand, but the fear in his voice was unmistakable. His hands were shaking as he stumbled into the room, his eyes wild, his face filled with the same dread that had gripped you the moment you stepped foot in the lodge. "It's here," he whispered, his voice trembling. "The fire's gone out. The forest is awake." The figure in the corner turned toward the old man, and for a moment their eyes met. There was no recognition in the exchange, no communication. It was as if the two of them were mere pawns in a game far beyond either of them. The air grew heavier. The temperature dropped even further, until it felt as though the very essence of warmth had been sucked from the room, leaving nothing but the cold, suffocating darkness. The old man stumbled back toward the fire, his eyes still locked on the figure. He raised his hands in a futile gesture as if to ward it off, but the figure did not move. It simply stood there, silent, watching. "You don't understand," the old man said, his voice growing more frantic. "The fire was never the barrier. It was just a lure, a way to keep us contained. It holds the worst of it back. The true horror lies beneath, deep in the earth." You glanced toward the fire, watching as the last embers flared and then went out, plunging the room into complete darkness. The cold was unbearable now, seeping into your very soul, and the silence that followed was even worse. The absence of sound was oppressive, like a weight pressing down on you, suffocating every breath you took. And then you heard it. A low rumble from deep within the earth. A deep, guttural sound that seemed to come from beneath the lodge itself. It was the sound of something shifting, something vast and ancient, something that had been waiting for the fire to go out, waiting for the last thread of protection to unravel. The figure in the corner smiled. Or at least you thought it did. Its face twisted, a grotesque mockery of a human expression, as the darkness around it seemed to grow, spreading like ink in water, seeping into every corner of the room. "It's time," it whispered, and the air around you seemed to tremble. You could feel the ground beneath you begin to shake, just a slight tremor at first, but it grew stronger, more violent. The walls of the lodge began to groan, cracking as if the very foundation was being torn apart. The air smelled of damp earth and rot and something else, something metallic, sharp, like the smell of blood. And then the voice, low, deep, reverberating through the walls, through the floor, spoke, and you understood what it meant. "The forest comes." A violent gust of wind blew through the lodge, sending the door flying open with a crash. Outside you could hear the rustling of trees, louder now, closer. The very earth beneath the lodge groaned, shifting as if something was emerging from deep below. The ground trembled violently beneath your feet as a blinding light flooded the room. And in that moment you understood. The fire had always been a false protection. The real horror wasn't in the forest. It wasn't in the figure or the lodge. It was in what the fire had been holding back. The forest was waking. The ground beneath you quaked, the tremors intensifying with each passing second. The walls of the lodge buckled, groaning like an old man in pain. The fire was gone, its light extinguished by the force of the trembling earth, leaving only the pale light from the doorway to illuminate the room. But even that light was fleeting, flickering like the last gasps of something dying. Outside, the sound of the forest came alive. The trees swayed violently, their trunks creaking and snapping like the bones of a titan awakening from slumber. The wind howled, but it wasn't just the wind, it was a voice, a deep, guttural sound that seemed to carry a language not meant for human ears. The forest was speaking, and its voice was as ancient as the earth itself. You took a step back, heart pounding in your chest, but your legs felt like lead. You couldn't move. The figure, still standing in the corner, watched you, its eyes glowing with an unholy light. The shadows around it shifted and stretched, as if the darkness itself were reaching out to pull you into its depths. "The fire is gone," the figure whispered, its voice like 1,000 whispers, overlapping and merging into one. "And now the forest will rise." The old man stood frozen, his face pale and haunted. He glanced between you and the figure, his eyes wide with fear and regret. There was something in his expression now, something more than just fear. It was a deep, profound guilt, as though he knew exactly what was about to happen and had no way to stop it. "You don't understand," the old man muttered, almost to himself. "The fire wasn't just a barrier. It was a seal, a way to keep the forest contained. But now that it's gone, the forest will claim what is its own." Your breath caught in your throat as the tremors beneath your feet grew stronger, the very lodge now seeming to buckle under the weight of the earth itself. You could hear the trees outside, their roots stretching and twisting through the soil, reaching deeper into the ground. And from deep beneath the earth you could feel something ancient and monstrous, stirring. "The forest, it is alive," the old man continued, his voice trembling. "It has always been alive, but it was bound by the fire, by the lodge, and by the people who came here, those who stayed and those who left." He turned away, stumbling toward the doorway, his gaze fixed on the darkening sky. The air outside was thick with mist, swirling like smoke, and the trees seemed to shift, their forms distorting in the shadows. "I thought I could contain it," the old man whispered, more to himself than to you. "I thought the fire would hold it back. But it's too late now." The figure in the corner shifted, its form flickering in and out of focus, its eyes never leaving you. The shadows in the room seemed to twist and elongate, wrapping themselves around you like a suffocating blanket. The tremors beneath your feet grew stronger still, as if something deep in the earth were pushing up, trying to break free. And then, with a sound like a thunderclap, the floor beneath you cracked open, sending shards of wood flying into the air. You stumbled back, but the crack in the ground widened, the earth itself splitting apart, revealing a yawning abyss beneath the lodge. The ground trembled violently, and then, from the depths of the earth, you saw it. A massive root, thick and gnarled, shot up from the crack in the ground, its surface slick with something dark and viscous. It was like a living thing, alive and hungry, stretching upward toward the sky. The root pulsed with energy, thrumming like a beating heart, and as it broke through the floorboards, you could feel the earth beneath your feet shake with its power. "It has begun," the figure said, its voice reverberating through the room. "The forest is waking. And when it wakes, it does not stop." The root twisted and writhed, dragging itself up through the floorboards with a force that splintered the wood around it. The walls creaked and groaned as if the entire lodge was being torn apart from the inside. The root's branches stretched outward, filling the room with an oppressive darkness, its tendrils snaking along the floor, the walls, reaching for anything it could touch. "The fire was never the end," the old man muttered, his voice filled with despair. "It was the beginning. The fire was the last thing holding it back." The root grew thicker, its surface slick and glistening, like some ancient creature rising from its tomb. Its massive tendrils wrapped around the pillars of the lodge, cracking them with ease. You could hear the trees outside, no longer just creaking in the wind, but shaking, thrashing in the storm. It was as if the forest itself was reacting to the root, as if it had called for it, and it had answered. With a final, deafening crack, the root tore through the lodge's floor, splintering the wood into jagged shards. The walls buckled, and the entire building groaned as if it were on the verge of collapse. But the root didn't stop. It surged upward, wrapping around the support beams, twisting and contorting, until it reached the ceiling. And then, as if in answer to the forest's call, the sky outside erupted in a storm of lightning and thunder, the clouds swirling as if they were alive, drawn toward the lodge. The wind howled, the trees screamed, and you could feel the very ground beneath you shift as the forest broke free from its prison. "It is the forest's will," the figure whispered, its eyes gleaming in the darkness. "It calls. We'll claim. And nothing will stop it." You turned, your mind racing, but there was no escape. The lodge, the forest, the root, it was all a part of something much bigger, something far older than you had ever imagined. The forest had been waiting for this moment, for the moment when the fire would fade, and the darkness would reclaim what was its own. And as the root's tendrils reached down toward you, you understood. The fire had been the only thing keeping the forest at bay, the only thing that had kept it from rising, from reclaiming what it had lost. But now the forest was free, and there was nothing you could do to stop it. The root moved closer, its tendrils curling around you, its touch cold and suffocating. You could feel the pulse of the earth beneath you, the heartbeat of something ancient and hungry. The forest had awoken, and it was hungry for more. The tendrils of the root, like monstrous, living fingers, wrapped themselves around you. Their touch was cold, unnaturally cold, as though they were made of something far older than wood, something ancient, something that had once belonged to the very heart of the earth. The roots writhed, coiling around your legs, your waist, pulling you deeper into the trembling, groaning lodge. The pulse of the forest, the beating of the earth itself, was so strong now that it drowned out everything else. The sound of the storm outside, the creaking of the lodge, the whispering of the figure in the corner. "You cannot escape," the figure's voice echoed, soft and sinister. "The forest calls, and you are part of it now." With every word it spoke, the tendrils tightened around you, sending waves of dread crashing through your chest, like the rush of cold water over your head. Your heart raced, but your body could hardly move. The roots dragged you further toward the massive crack in the floor, where the yawning abyss beneath the lodge awaited. The air was thick with the smell of decay, damp, earthy, and foul, like something long buried that had finally come to life. The old man was no longer speaking. He had retreated to the far corner of the room, his body trembling, his hands shaking. His face was pale, his eyes wide with terror. There was no denying it now. He had known this was coming. He had known the forest would rise, and yet he had done nothing to stop it. "You thought you could control it," you muttered through gritted teeth, your eyes fixed on the writhing root, the dark mass of it spreading across the room. "But you can't. No one can." The old man's eyes flickered to you, a mixture of guilt and fear flashing across his face. His lips moved, but no sound escaped. His mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, but the only noise was the ominous rumble from beneath the earth. The ground itself was shaking, the wooden beams groaning, straining under the pressure of what lay below. The forest had awakened. It had been sleeping for centuries, hidden beneath the earth, beneath the roots of the trees, waiting for the fire to die, for the last thread of protection to snap. And now it was free, and you were its prey. The darkness in the room seemed to stretch, to grow, like it was feeding on the fear, on the hopelessness that filled the lodge. "It feeds on fear," the figure's voice came again, soft, cruel. "It has always fed on fear. It grows stronger with every soul it consumes." You struggled against the roots that held you, trying to break free, but the more you fought, the tighter they became. It felt as though the forest itself was pressing against your skin, wrapping itself around you, suffocating you. The ancient force beneath the earth pulsed with a terrible, insatiable hunger. "This place is a tomb," the figure continued, "and you, like all those before you, are trapped in its grip. You will become part of it." The roots dragged you closer to the crack in the floor, and for the first time you could see what lay below. The abyss was vast, a dark chasm that seemed to stretch forever, an endless pit of blackness. You could feel the weight of it, the gravity of the darkness pulling you downward, as if the very ground beneath you was alive, hungry for your soul. And then the air seemed to change. The whispering of the wind outside had died down, replaced by a low, guttural growl, something deep and primal, rising from the heart of the earth. It was a sound you couldn't place, a sound like the earth itself was waking up, stretching its limbs, and the ground beneath you groaned in response. The cracks in the floor began to spread, breaking apart in jagged lines like a spider web. The very structure of the lodge seemed to be coming apart at the seams, as if it couldn't hold the weight of what had been unleashed. The room shook violently, the walls shuddering with the force of the earth shifting beneath them. And then, from the crack in the floor, a shape began to emerge. It was massive, huge, like a great twisting mass of roots, bark, and stone. But it wasn't just a tree or a root or a creature. It was something far older, something far more terrible. It was the forest, or at least a part of it, its true form, its heart, its very essence. The root that had broken through the floor was only the beginning. The shape rose higher, pushing through the broken wood, its tendrils snaking upward, filling the room with an overwhelming presence. The very air around you seemed to ripple with its energy, thick with a power you couldn't comprehend. It was as if the forest itself had taken on a physical form, and that form was now reaching for you. "The forest does not forget," the figure said, its voice barely a whisper now. "It never forgets. It remembers every soul it has claimed." You looked at the old man, your heart pounding, your mind racing. His face was filled with sorrow, his eyes locked on the terrible form now rising from the depths. There was nothing left for you here, no way out, no escape. The forest had won. The fire had been its only hold, and now that it was gone, the forest had reclaimed what it had lost. "I'm sorry," the old man whispered, his voice breaking. "I thought I could stop it, but I couldn't. No one can." The roots around you tightened, pulling you toward the dark, yawning chasm. You could feel the earth vibrating beneath you, and in that moment you knew that you were not just being dragged into the pit below. The forest was pulling you into it, pulling you into the heart of it, where it would claim you, where you would become part of it. And as the dark form continued to rise, you felt something else, something more than just fear. It was a feeling of inevitability, of finality. There was no running, no fighting, no way to escape. The forest was alive. And you, like all who had come before, were now part of its endless hunger. The roots' tendrils wrapped around you like a vice, pulling you downward, dragging you toward the abyss. The last thing you saw was the figure standing in the corner, its glowing eyes fixed on you, and the whispering of the wind from outside, as if the trees themselves were waiting. The forest is always watching. The last remnants of the lodge were crumbling beneath you. Every passing second felt like an eternity as the ancient form of the forest emerged from the earth, its massive roots and tendrils twisting and writhing like living serpents. The air was thick with the stench of decay, damp earth, and something else, something that felt like a presence, a pulse that thrummed through the very ground beneath your feet. The world outside had become a blur, the wind howling like a chorus of ghosts, the trees bending and breaking under an unseen force. You could feel the tendrils of the forest tightening around you, their cold, unyielding grasp dragging you toward the crack in the floor. Your heart hammered in your chest, your body fighting against the pull, but it was futile. The roots were relentless, their grip like iron, pulling you deeper and deeper toward the abyss. You couldn't see the bottom, but you could feel it, the pull of the earth, the weight of the forest calling you into its depths. No, this can't be happening. You gasped, your breath coming in short, ragged gasps. You fought harder, your hands clawing at the roots, trying to break free, but the more you struggled, the more the roots seemed to grow, wrapping around your body, pulling you downward with an almost cruel, deliberate force. And then, as if in response to your resistance, the ground beneath you split open further, the chasm widening, swallowing up the last remnants of the lodge. The walls groaned, the floor splintering with a sickening crack, as though the very foundation of the building were being devoured by the earth itself. The figure in the corner remained still, its glowing eyes watching you, its expression unreadable. It didn't move, didn't speak, as though your fate was of no consequence to it. It was simply a part of the forest's design, a manifestation of something older than time, something that existed beyond comprehension. The forest had no sympathy, no empathy. It simply was. And now it was awake. The old man, his face pale and worn with the weight of guilt, had retreated to the farthest corner of the room. He was muttering to himself, his hands trembling as he fumbled with something in his pocket. A small object, a locket perhaps, or a key. It was unclear. But his eyes never left you, and the terror on his face was palpable. "I couldn't stop it," he whispered, his voice barely audible above the groaning of the earth. "I thought the fire would hold it back. I was wrong." You wanted to scream at him, to ask why he hadn't done more, why he had let this happen. But there was no time for questions. The earth was calling you, and its voice was deafening, a low, rumbling growl that vibrated through your bones. The roots had you now, dragging you deeper, pulling you toward the yawning darkness. And then a sudden shift, a tremor in the air. The roots around you froze, their grip loosening just enough for you to catch your breath. The forest seemed to pause, the earth holding its breath as if it had sensed something new, something unexpected. The old man's voice broke the silence. "You don't understand," he said, his voice trembling with a kind of sorrow that made your blood run cold. "The fire wasn't just holding the forest back. It was keeping something else at bay, something far worse than anything you've seen." Your pulse quickened, and you turned your head to him, eyes wide. "What do you mean? What could be worse than this?" The old man's eyes were wide, his face contorted with fear, and for the first time, you saw something in him. Something raw, something terrified. It was as if he had been living in denial for so long, but now the truth was undeniable. The forest had always been here. But there was something else, something beneath it, something far older, far more dangerous. "There are things beneath the earth," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Things that were trapped long before this forest ever grew. Things that the fire kept sealed. But now the fire is gone, and those things are waking too." The weight of his words crashed into you like a physical blow. The air seemed to grow even colder, the chill sinking into your skin, into your bones. The roots around you tightened again, dragging you toward the chasm, but now you felt something else. The forest was no longer the only thing that had awoken. Something deeper, darker, and far more ancient had stirred beneath the earth, and the forest was only the messenger, the harbinger of a greater terror that had been lying in wait. "You have to understand," the old man continued, his eyes wild with desperation. "The forest, it feeds on fear, yes, but what lies beneath? It feeds on souls." A horrified gasp escaped your lips as the realization hit you like a wave. "Souls?" you whispered. "What do you mean, souls?" The old man turned toward you, his face pale, his eyes hollow with the weight of his knowledge. The fire was the last thing holding the darkness beneath in check. The fire wasn't just a barrier for the forest, it was keeping them at bay. His voice was almost a whisper now, barely audible over the rising winds outside. "When the fire went out, the forest began to awaken, yes. But the real danger is what's coming from the earth. It's already begun to stir. And when it wakes completely, it will take everything. It will take us all." A chilling silence followed his words. The very air seemed to grow heavier, thick with the weight of his confession. The roots that had been pulling you toward the chasm loosened again, but this time there was no relief. There was only a sense of inevitability, of something beyond your control. The earth was awakening, and there was no escaping it. As you gazed into the widening crack in the floor, you could see something deep in the shadows beneath. It was moving slowly at first like a living thing. A massive, shifting shape, coiled and writhing, rising from the depths of the earth. And then, with a sudden violent motion, a massive tendril shot up from the crack, its dark form glistening with an unnatural sheen, like it was covered in oil or something worse. It was vast, ancient, and full of hunger, and it was coming for you. The air grew thick with the scent of rot and decay. The figure in the corner did not move. It did not speak. It simply watched, its glowing eyes fixated on you, as if your fate had already been decided. And then the ground shook once more. The root, the massive one that had risen from the crack in the floor, pushed its way forward. It was no longer just a root. It was an arm, an enormous, twisted, gnarled arm covered in dark, thick bark, stretching toward you like a predator reaching for its prey. It was hungry, and you were its meal. The arm, twisted and gnarled like the skeletal limbs of some ancient creature, reached toward you. The air around it hummed with a terrible energy, a low vibration that rattled the walls of the collapsing lodge and seeped into your bones. Each tendril seemed to pulse with an unnatural rhythm, like the heartbeat of the earth itself. The root-like arm, slick and black with the slickness of ancient oils and earth, twisted upward, its bark-like skin groaning under the strain, crackling with a deep, reverberating sound. It wasn't just an arm anymore. It was the manifestation of the forest's hunger, the physical embodiment of everything that had been buried beneath the earth for centuries, forgotten and sealed away. The root's tendrils brushed against your body, its touch cold and clammy, slick with the earth's moisture, and it felt like the forest was inside you, its cold fingers pressing against your skin, burrowing into your flesh. The forest feeds on fear. But there's something beneath it, something older. It feeds on souls, and soon it will want yours, the old man whispered, his voice trembling, his wide eyes flicking nervously between the tendrils and the figure in the corner. His hands shook as he stepped back further, his gaze falling to the ground. There was no bravery left in him now, only a hopeless, tired resignation. Your mind was racing. Everything was falling apart. The lodge was crumbling. The forest was waking. And something darker, far darker, was rising from the earth just beneath the surface, just beneath the veil of reality. The roots began to crawl toward you, wrapping tighter with every movement you made, and the cold, biting air made your breath shallow and panicked. What does it want? You gasped, choking on the words, your voice trembling with raw fear. The old man's eyes locked on you for a brief moment, a flicker of something like compassion, or maybe pity, before his face hardened and he looked away. His lips parted, but it was like the words were caught in his throat, stuck somewhere between guilt and terror. It's not what it wants, it's what it needs, he finally murmured. The forest has always been hungry. But what lies beneath it, below the surface of this land, that's the true source of its hunger. The fire kept that hunger bound. It held it back. But now that the fire is gone, there's nothing to stop it from consuming everything. A tremor of realization spread through your veins like ice. The forest wasn't just trying to claim you, it was trying to consume you, to swallow you whole, to devour your soul, just as it had done to countless others throughout the centuries. But the hunger didn't end with you. The ground beneath you groaned like the very earth was twisting in agony. The massive root arm trembled, and as it did, a distant, bone-chilling howl echoed through the trees outside. The wind had picked up again, tearing through the forest with an unnatural ferocity, rattling the already damaged lodge to its core. But that howl wasn't just the wind. It was something more, something deeper. It's waking, the old man muttered. The thing beneath the forest, it's rising just as the root rises. It needs souls to feed, to gain strength, to return to its full form. You barely heard him over the sound of the earth shaking beneath your feet, the cracks in the floor widening, threatening to swallow you whole. The dark tendrils of the root now encircled you, tightening with every movement, as if the forest itself were trying to suffocate you, pull you into the abyss that was growing beneath your feet. The wind outside began to scream louder, a banshee wail that made the very ground tremble with its force. The air was thick now, stifling, suffocating. You could barely breathe, every inhalation pulling in the suffocating stench of wet earth and decay. The figure in the corner, its eyes glowing faintly in the darkness, moved, and for the first time it spoke again. You are part of it now. The forest will claim you as it has claimed so many others. It feeds, it grows, and nothing can stop it. The room seemed to collapse in on you, the walls warping, bending, as if the very space itself was distorting, warping, pulling apart at the seams. The ground trembled beneath you again, this time with a force so violent that you were thrown to the floor. The lodge itself cracked and groaned, the wooden beams splitting open, revealing the yawning chasm beneath. The dark root arm continued to rise, its reach stretching upward, toward the dark sky outside, toward the howling wind. And then, as if summoned by the chaos around you, it appeared. A shape, vast and indescribable, moved within the darkened pit beneath the floor, something so enormous, so ancient that it defied all logic. Its form was a swirling mass of roots, flesh, and stone, pulsating with an unnatural energy, like the very fabric of reality was bending to allow it to exist. You could see it, hear it, in the silence that followed the storm's howl. The noise was no longer the wind. The forest had opened a door to something much worse, much older. The ground quivered as the massive shape slowly, impossibly, began to rise from the depths. It was a creature, but not like anything you had ever imagined. Its body was a twisting mass of roots, veins, and shifting shadows, its form constantly changing, as if it were made of the very earth itself. Its eyes, if you could even call them eyes, were deep, dark voids, and they glowed faintly, like the embers of a fire just before it goes out. They locked onto you, piercing into your very soul. This is the forest's heart, the old man whispered, his voice barely audible now. This is the thing beneath it all. The true forest, the one that fed for centuries while we lived our lives. And now it rises to claim everything. The figure's voice faded, and in the absolute silence that followed, the shape of the beast became clearer, its roots sprawling out, its form undulating like it was alive, like it was breathing, waiting. It was far beyond your understanding, something that had existed long before humankind, something so old that it was beyond the concepts of good and evil. It was hunger, pure and simple, the embodiment of the earth's desire to reclaim what had been stolen from it. The floor beneath you cracked further, the roots now fully engulfing the room. They began to crawl up your body, wrapping around your arms, pulling you toward the abyss. You could feel the pull of the earth, the hunger of the beast beneath, rising to claim you. The old man was sobbing in the corner, his eyes wide, his hands trembling. You understood now. The forest wasn't just alive. It wasn't just a force of nature. It was the living pulse of the earth itself, and beneath that pulse, beneath the roots, beneath the canopy, was something far worse. Something that fed on fear, that fed on souls, and it was hungry. So hungry. And now it was your turn. The tendrils wrapped tighter, the darkness closed in, and with a final shuddering gasp, you were pulled into the ground. And the forest claimed you. The earth was swallowing you. There was no light, no sound, just a growing, suffocating darkness, pressing in from all sides. The roots around you twisted tighter, their cold, clammy tendrils wrapping around your arms, your chest, your legs, dragging you deeper into the heart of the earth. The cold was unbearable, sinking into your skin, gnawing at your bones as though the very essence of warmth had been drained from your body. The sensation was not one of falling, but of being pulled. It was as though the forest itself had stretched out, its roots snaking through the earth to drag you into its depths, to claim you as it had claimed so many others before. You tried to scream, to fight, but the more you struggled, the tighter the roots gripped you, squeezing the breath from your lungs, pulling you deeper into the earth's embrace. And then, suddenly, there was a shift. The ground beneath you seemed to give way, and for a moment there was nothing. No roots, no earth, no lodge. Just darkness, an all-encompassing, oppressive darkness that seemed to stretch on forever. Your body felt weightless, suspended between two worlds, between the life you had known and the horror that now surrounded you. Then a sound. It was faint at first, like the distant murmur of a river, but it grew louder, closer. The sound of something moving, something stirring beneath you, like the shifting of the earth itself. And then, as if on cue, the darkness parted. You were no longer in the lodge, no longer even in the forest. You had been pulled beneath it all. Beneath the surface, beneath the very roots that had claimed you. The air here was thick with the scent of decay, of ancient earth, of things long forgotten. The ground was damp and soft beneath your feet, and the atmosphere was heavy, suffocating, like a tomb that had been sealed for millennia. The walls around you were jagged stone, slick with moisture, dripping with the dampness of the underground world. The very earth seemed to pulse, to throb with an unnatural rhythm, like the heartbeat of something vast and monstrous. And in the distance, just barely visible in the dim light, was the shape of the creature. It was no longer a vague form, no longer just a twisting mass of roots and branches. No, now it was fully revealed. It was colossal, a being so large, so ancient, that it defied comprehension. Its body was like the trunk of a tree, vast and gnarled, twisted with the scars of centuries. Its roots extended outward like living veins, burrowing deep into the earth, stretching out like a vast network, drawing energy from the very core of the planet. Its face, if you could even call it a face, was a mask of darkness, eyes deep voids, glowing faintly with an eerie green light. Its mouth, if it even had one, was a jagged opening in the bark of its massive trunk, its teeth sharp as jagged stones. It was not alive in the sense you understood, but rather a force, a presence, an ancient being that had existed long before humankind ever set foot on this land. And as it shifted, the earth trembled beneath you. The roots, which had been pulling you into the depths, began to pull back, releasing their grip on you. The weightless feeling returned, but this time you felt something different. It was as though the creature had seen you. Its glowing eyes fixed on you, and you could feel the weight of its gaze press down on you, suffocating and invasive, like it was peering into the very core of your being, reading your thoughts, your fears, your memories. The air around you seemed to crackle with the intensity of its attention, and you could feel your own heartbeat quicken in response. "You are here," a voice rumbled in your mind. It wasn't a voice you could hear, but something deeper, something that resonated in your very bones. "You have crossed the threshold. You are mine now, as much a part of me as the roots, as the earth itself." You tried to speak, tried to protest, but no words came. Your throat was dry, constricted with fear, and the only sound that escaped was a low, strangled gasp. "You cannot escape," the voice continued, its tone deep, resonating with an ancient power that made your very soul tremble. "The forest has claimed you, and the earth has accepted you. There is nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. You belong to me now." The ground beneath you shifted again, and you felt your body being drawn closer to the creature. Its roots stretched out, wrapping around you, lifting you off the ground. They were no longer just roots, they were extensions of the creature itself, reaching out to claim you as part of its vast, insatiable hunger. The more the roots touched you, the more you could feel them. They were not made of wood and bark, but of flesh, living, pulsing flesh, like veins running through the earth itself. The moment they made contact with your skin, a wave of cold shot through your body, cold that seemed to come from the very heart of the earth, from something ancient and unfathomable. The creature let out a low growl, like the sound of thunder deep underground, and the roots tightened their grip. The walls of the cavern seemed to close in, the very air thickening with the scent of wet earth, decay, and something far more sinister. And then, as if summoned by its will, the creature's enormous root-like limbs began to pull at you, drawing you toward its massive, gaping mouth. It was not a mouth like a human's. No, this one was a dark, jagged opening in the trunk of the beast, lined with stone-like teeth that glinted with an eerie, otherworldly light. The roots began to coil around your limbs, dragging you ever closer to that abyss. The earth beneath you groaned again, the entire cavern shaking as though something beneath it was stirring, rising. The creature's roots twisted, and for a brief moment, you could see the cavern walls shifting like the earth was alive in a way that no living thing should be. The roots moved faster, pulling you toward the creature's gaping maw. And then, just as you were about to be consumed by the beast, something deep within you shifted. In the darkness, something stirred, an instinct, a primal force, something that had been buried beneath years of fear and survival instincts. It was a memory, a fragment of something long forgotten, but it was enough. You reached into that memory, into that feeling, and with every ounce of strength, you pushed against the forest's power. For a brief moment, the roots hesitated, just long enough for you to gasp, to gather the courage to act. You didn't know what would happen next, but one thing was certain. You would not go quietly into the maw of the beast. Not now. Not without a fight. The roots around you tightened with unnatural strength, their flesh-like surface slick and cold against your skin. The pull toward the creature's massive, gaping mouth intensified. The closer you got, the more you could feel it, the hunger, the gnawing desire of the earth itself to swallow you whole. Every inch of you was being dragged into the depths of the unknown, closer to the thing that had been buried for centuries, and the air around you was thick with its ancient power. But the memory, whatever it was, pulled at you. A fragment of something you couldn't quite grasp, but it was enough. It was familiar, and it filled you with a sense of resolve. You had been fighting for your life, running, hiding, resisting, but now you were about to confront something far older, far more dangerous than anything you had ever known. You were facing a force beyond comprehension, but deep inside, you knew you had one chance, one moment to break free. A sudden wave of energy surged through you, a rush of pure raw instinct that flowed like fire through your veins. You didn't know where it came from, only that it was real enough to shift the balance of the struggle. The roots around your body shuddered, their hold weakening, if only for a moment. That moment was all you needed. No, you cried out, your voice raw and desperate, but there was power in it now, power that you hadn't felt before. The roots around you seemed to falter for a brief instant, their grip loosening ever so slightly, but it was enough. With every ounce of strength you had, you pushed against the earth, against the ancient force that had been dragging you into its jaws. The creature, the force behind the forest, let out an earth-shaking growl, a rumble that reverberated through the entire cavern. The roots writhed, snapping like living tendrils, pushing harder, pulling harder, but you could feel them losing their grip. The energy, that force within you, fought back. With a final, primal cry, you thrust your hand out, as if reaching for something you couldn't quite see, something beyond this nightmare, beyond this cavern, beyond the roots that held you. The world around you shifted. For a brief moment, you thought you could feel the heartbeat of the earth itself. A rhythm, deep and ancient, something that had been pulsing long before the forest had taken root. The roots recoiled. The creature, sensing the disturbance, let out a thunderous roar, one so loud, so deep, it shook the very walls of the cavern. The ground trembled beneath you, and the air seemed to crackle with the energy of it. The earth was alive, but you were alive too. And the forest, in all its ancient, insatiable hunger, was not the only force at play here. The roots around you slackened, their tight grip loosening, and for the first time since you had fallen into the abyss, you felt something like freedom. You weren't entirely free, not yet, but you were no longer at the mercy of the forest, no longer at the mercy of the hunger that had pulled you here. The ground shook again, and then, in an instant, the roots released you. You were thrown backward, crashing into the jagged stone walls of the cavern, your body bruised and battered, but alive. For a brief, precious moment, you were disoriented, your mind reeling from the sudden shift in the battle, but you didn't have time to waste. You pushed yourself to your feet, ignoring the pain that shot through your limbs. The creature's glowing eyes locked onto you. Its massive form, so vast it seemed to fill the entire cavern, shifted, its bark-like skin creaking as it moved. The roots beneath it pulsed, the ground beneath you quaking in response to its movements. It was angry. You could feel the fury radiating from it, an ancient rage that had been buried for centuries. But you had done something that had made the creature pause, even if only for a moment. You weren't sure how, but you had disrupted the creature's grasp on you. The ancient force that had ruled the forest, that had fed on the fear and souls of countless victims, was not invincible. You had felt it deep within your soul, a power greater than anything the forest could bring. The roots around you began to shift again, twisting like serpents, trying to entangle you once more. But now you understood something that you hadn't before. This wasn't just a battle for your survival. It was a battle for control of the land itself, control of the earth, the very force that had been bound for so long. The old man's voice echoed in your mind, a distant whisper that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. The fire kept it sealed, but fire alone cannot hold back the earth. You must become a part of it. You must take its power, control it, or it will consume you. You gritted your teeth and reached out once again, your hands shaking, but your will stronger than before. The roots, the earth, it wasn't just pulling at you. It was part of you now. And you understood its rhythm, its pulse. You had touched it, felt it, and now you had to become a part of it to survive. You thrust your hands forward, and for the first time, the roots didn't fight. They responded. The creature let out a deafening roar, shaking the cavern with its fury, but the ground beneath you shifted. The earth itself seemed to part for you, as if recognizing the shift in your will, the new force within you. The roots retracted, pulling back from you like the tendrils of some ancient beast retreating into its lair. And then you felt it. Power, raw, overwhelming power. The forest, the creature, the earth. It was all one unbroken force, and now for the first time you could feel its pulse. But this wasn't the creature's hunger you had tapped into. This was something else, something older, something that had been buried even deeper than the beast itself. It was the earth's power, the very life of the world around you, and you now held a piece of it. The creature, sensing the shift in power, thrashed violently, its roots lashing out like wild snakes, but now it was you who was in control. The forest had awakened, but now you had the power to shape it. The earth trembled beneath you, and you raised your hands once more, feeling the pulse of the world beneath your skin. The roots around you responded, twisting, coiling, bending to your will. The creature's growl deepened, but it was weaker now, more distant. The forest had been its prison, and you had broken that prison open. But now you could seal it again, or at least keep it in check. The choice was yours. Would you become a part of the earth itself, wielding its power to protect the land from this creature? Or would you allow it to consume you, to let the forest swallow everything in its wake? The ancient beast watched you, its glowing eyes fixed on you with a mixture of fury and disbelief. It had never been challenged like this before. The earth, now alive beneath your feet, was waiting for your decision. The cavern was silent, save for the soft, rhythmic pulsing of the earth beneath your feet. The roots around you hung in the air, twitching, waiting, as though they were waiting for a command. The creature, its massive form looming over you, its glowing eyes filled with fury and disbelief, seemed to hesitate. For the first time, it was not the one in control. The tides had shifted, and you were standing at the heart of the storm. But there was something more. The power you had awakened, the force of the earth that now coursed through your veins, was not just a gift, it was a burden. You could feel it deep inside, like an ancient weight pressing against your chest, demanding to be used, demanding to be released. It was the very essence of the world around you, the heartbeat of the forest, the pulse of the land itself. But the price of this power you knew would be steep. You could feel the weight of its hunger, the terrible promise that the earth made to those who tapped into its strength. The roots, alive and sentient, could feel it too, could sense your indecision, your uncertainty. The creature's glowing eyes locked onto you, a strange mixture of contempt and desperation in its gaze. It was angry, yes, but it was also afraid. It had been the ruler of this land for centuries, and now it was the beast that cowered before you. The earth trembled again, the air growing thick with the tension between the forces. The roots around you twisted, and the creature, sensing its dwindling power, let out another growl, a rumbling, guttural sound that reverberated through the stone walls. The cavern shook again, and the temperature dropped sharply, the cold seeping into your bones as if the very air itself was afraid. You are not meant to control this. The voice rumbled in your mind, deep and guttural, like the voice of the earth itself. This is the balance of nature, the way things were meant to be. You cannot change that. You cannot break it. The words felt like an ancient warning, a warning that you could not ignore. But the power, that overwhelming energy coursing through your body, was almost intoxicating. The roots were at your mercy, the creature was at your mercy, the earth itself was at your mercy. You could feel the weight of the decision settling on your shoulders like an iron chain. The power you held was vast, immense, and yet it was fragile. The moment you acted, you would tip the balance of everything. The earth was not a tool, not an instrument to be wielded lightly. It was alive, and it would demand something in return. You could feel the pull of that price, a warning buried deep in your bones. If you chose to master the earth, you would be its guardian, its protector. The creature, the ancient terror beneath the earth, would be subdued, its hunger held at bay. The roots would bend to your will, and you would have the strength to ensure that the forest remained at peace. But the power would consume you piece by piece. The earth would become a part of you, and you would become a part of it. You would lose yourself in the rhythm of the roots, in the pulse of the earth, until you were nothing more than a wraith, a hollow vessel, keeping the peace at the cost of your humanity. But if you chose to surrender to the creature, if you allowed it to reclaim what it had lost, the forest would awaken again in full force. The creature would rise to its full strength, and the world would be consumed in its hunger. The earth would be its playground, and everything in its path would wither and die. The ancient terror would take what it wanted, and you would become another soul lost to the forest's hunger. Your hand trembled as you reached out, the roots stretching toward you like ancient fingers. The creature's eyes burned into you, its rage palpable. It knew you were the only one who could stop it, but it also knew that your power was not limitless. The question burned in your mind, the weight of it nearly unbearable. Could you live with the consequences of either choice? Could you control the earth, or would it control you in the end? You looked down at the roots around you, their twisted forms shimmering in the dim light. You could feel their pulse, their hunger, deep beneath the surface of the earth. They were alive, yes, but they were also a reflection of you. Every choice you made, every action you took would change the balance of this land. Would you fight to keep the balance intact, or would you let the forest consume all? You will regret this, the creature's voice rumbled again, its tone low and threatening. The earth is not your ally. It is not your friend. It will consume you just as it has consumed all who dared to cross it. You clenched your fists, pushing back against the weight of its words. The earth was alive, but so were you. You had a choice. The power you held was yours to control, if you could master it. You closed your eyes and reached deep inside, searching for the heart of the earth, searching for the force that pulsed beneath you, beneath everything. You felt it again, the rhythm, the heartbeat of the world. It wasn't just the roots, or the creature, or the forest. It was everything, the trees, the stones, the soil, the rivers, the air. The earth itself, alive and breathing. You extended your hands once more, feeling the roots coil around your arms, the force of nature responding to your will. This time you didn't resist it. You didn't fight it. You became it. The roots responded, twisting and bending at your command, their sharp, twisted forms no longer a threat but a tool, an extension of your own will. You could feel the force of the earth flowing through you, like a river of power, ancient and unstoppable. You could feel the creature's presence weakening, its connection to the land fraying as the roots began to pull back, shrinking away from you. The creature's growl turned to a desperate hiss, its massive form shifting in the shadows. You could feel its strength slipping away. Its hunger was no match for the power of the earth, the balance you had now awakened. But it wasn't enough yet. You reached deeper, felt the dark energy that lingered beneath the surface, the true force that had been buried for so long. And with one final, overwhelming push, you called upon it. The roots roared, and the creature screamed, its monstrous form shaking violently as it was pulled back into the earth from which it had risen. The cavern trembled, the earth shifting and groaning as if it were alive, resisting, but you had control. You had become the forest, the earth, the very roots of the land. You were its protector, its keeper, and with that power, the creature was sealed once more, buried beneath the earth, where it could never rise again. But the price of your victory was steep. The power of the earth was yours, but so too was its weight. You could feel it inside you, pulsing in your veins, wrapping itself around your very soul. The forest had claimed you, and you had claimed it. There was no going back now. You had won. But at what cost? The cavern was still, save for the faint, trembling echo of the earth itself. The roots that had once threatened to tear you apart now lay dormant, their movements stilled as though the very forest had fallen into a deep slumber. The immense creature that had once loomed over you, its towering form of twisted roots and bark, was gone, sealed back into the heart of the earth, buried beneath layers of soil and stone. The power you had awakened, the power of the earth itself, had driven it back, and now the cavern was quiet once more. But the silence was not a relief. It was the silence of something that had shifted, something that had been forever changed. You stood alone now, your breath coming in slow, measured gasps, your body trembling with the aftermath of the battle. The roots, now motionless at your feet, felt like silent witnesses to your victory, or perhaps your damnation. You had sealed the creature away, but the cost of that victory had already begun to settle deep within you. The power, the earth's power, that you had taken in, that had surged through your body, still burned beneath your skin, its pulse like the beating of a distant drum, a rhythm that you could no longer ignore. It was a part of you now. You could feel it, the weight of it pressing on your chest, constricting your breath. It was the pulse of the world, the heartbeat of everything, and it was alive within you. But with that power came a deep, insatiable hunger, an overwhelming sense of connection to the land, to the earth, to the very roots beneath your feet. It was as if you could feel the whispers of the trees, the sway of the grass, the trembling of the stones. Everything had a voice now, a language that you could almost understand. And in that understanding was a truth that you could not escape. The earth was alive, but it was also a force that was unforgiving, that would consume if left unchecked. You were no longer just a person, a survivor of the forest's nightmare. You were its keeper, its protector. The power you had tapped into could shape the land, could bring peace, or destruction. You held the earth in the palm of your hand, but its weight was too much for one soul to bear. Your hands shook as you lowered them, the roots slowly retracting, the energy beginning to settle back into the ground. But the weight of it remained, a constant presence, thrumming in your mind and your body. The ground beneath you was no longer just earth. It was a part of you now, just as you were a part of it. The connection ran deeper than blood, deeper than skin. It was in your very bones. You will never be free of it. The voice echoed in your mind once more, the deep, rumbling voice of the earth. You have taken what was never meant to be taken. The balance has shifted, and now you must carry the weight of that choice. You tried to breathe, tried to steady your mind, but the voice was relentless, its presence an ever-present hum, a constant reminder of what you had done. It wasn't just the creature that had been sealed away. It was the balance of the world, the ancient forces that had kept the land in check for so long. And now, those forces were yours to command or destroy. You staggered back, your hand pressing against the cold stone of the cavern wall as you fought to stay upright. Your mind felt heavy, the weight of the power pressing against it, trying to control you, to pull you under. You couldn't think straight. The pulse of the earth was too loud, too all-encompassing. It was as though the entire world was beating in time with your heart. You will not be alone. The voice came again, softer this time, but still powerful. The earth will always call to you. The forest will always reach for you. The words sent a chill through you, and you looked around, your gaze darting to the shifting shadows of the cavern. You had come here alone, but now you could feel the presence of something else. The forest had seen you, had felt your power, and it had accepted you. But it wasn't just the forest. It was everything. The trees, the roots, the soil beneath your feet, they were all waiting for you. They were connected to you now, just as you were connected to them. The world was not just a place to walk through. It was alive, a living, breathing entity that you could influence, bend to your will. But the question was, would you control it, or would it control you? You sank to your knees, your hands clutching at the earth, feeling the coolness of the stone beneath your fingertips. The earth seemed to respond to your touch, as if it recognized you, as if it knew you were its master now. The energy that coursed through you surged again, and for a brief moment, you could see the world through the eyes of the forest. The trees stretching to the heavens, the roots sprawling deep into the earth, the animals moving through the underbrush, the rivers flowing with ancient currents. It was beautiful, mesmerizing, but it was also overwhelming. You felt a sense of oneness, of purpose, but also a deep loneliness, as if you were the only one who could understand the truth of what had happened. The forest had called to you, yes, but it was not a call for friendship. It was a call to power. And now you had no choice but to answer. The ground beneath you shifted, and you looked up to see a crack forming in the stone, a jagged line splitting the cavern floor. The roots around you began to stir again, slowly rising from the earth like ancient fingers reaching for the sky. The earth was moving, responding to your every thought, your every command. The power was yours, but at what cost? You stood, taking a shaky breath as you looked toward the distant mouth of the cavern, where the light from the outside world filtered through the cracks. The world was waiting for you, waiting for your decision. The creature had been sealed, but that was only the beginning. The earth had chosen you, and now you were its chosen. But the forest was not finished with you. The path forward was uncertain, the consequences of your actions unclear. You had the power to shape the world, to protect it, or to destroy it. You could feel the weight of the choice pressing on you, the responsibility of wielding such power threatening to overwhelm you. And yet, in the back of your mind, a question lingered. What if the creature was not the true enemy? What if something darker, older, was still lurking beneath the surface? The earth whispered, a low, rumbling sound, but it was too quiet to understand. The forest waited. The world was yours to control. But at what cost? The earth was still, yet the silence was deafening. It pressed in around you, suffocating and oppressive, as though the very air had thickened with the weight of your choice. The roots, now dormant, pulsed faintly beneath your feet, their energy resonating through your limbs like a heartbeat you could not escape. The power of the earth had become a part of you, but you could feel something else beneath the surface. Something deeper. Something ancient and waiting. You stood at the edge of the cavern, your mind heavy with the enormity of your decision. The path forward was no longer clear. The forest had chosen you, yes, but what did that truly mean? The power to control the land, the ability to bend nature to your will, was that truly a gift or a curse? The earth's whispers were growing louder, more insistent, and you couldn't shake the feeling that something had been awakened. Something waiting. The crack in the stone beneath you spread wider, the jagged fissure growing deeper as though the earth itself was trying to reach out, to pull you closer. The roots, though still, seemed to vibrate with an energy that felt too alive, too aware. You could feel them like millions of tiny threads weaving through your mind, whispering to you in a language you couldn't understand, but felt in your very soul. The forest had always been here, beneath the earth, beneath the sky, and now it had found a way to speak to you. The weight of the earth's power was overwhelming, but it was more than just power, it was a responsibility. The creature had been sealed away, yes, but the forest, the earth, was still watching. Watching you. You could feel its eyes, unseen but present, like 1,000 ancient gazes piercing your very soul. They were waiting for you to make your next move. And yet, the deeper you delved into this power, the more you wondered if you had the right to make that decision. Something moved in the shadows of the cavern, something deep and hidden beneath layers of stone, beneath the roots. The cavern trembled again, but this time it wasn't the roots that caused it. It was a deeper, older force. The earth itself seemed to groan under an unseen weight, as though something was stirring beneath. You have awakened something, the earth rumbled softly in your mind, the voice deeper than before, more ancient, more powerful. Something that has slept for ages. The forest calls to you, yes, but you are not the only one who has heard its call. Your heart skipped a beat, a chill running down your spine. The voice, though soft, carried a weight, a gravity that was impossible to ignore. The power that had surged through you, was it only the earth? Or was there something else beneath it, something darker, older? The air grew thick with the scent of damp earth, and the ground beneath your feet seemed to hum, vibrating like a living thing. The roots, still coiled at your feet, began to twitch once more, but this time they were moving, slowly, almost imperceptibly, as if they were listening for something. You took a step back, your gaze scanning the cavern, searching for something, anything, that would explain the strange sensation creeping over you. But there was nothing. Only the roots, the dark walls, the crushing silence. And then, as if the very stones had parted, you saw it. Deep in the shadows, in the farthest corner of the cavern, something stirred. A shape, barely visible, moved with an unnatural grace, too fluid, too quiet. It was almost as if the shadows themselves had taken form. At first, you thought it was just your eyes playing tricks on you, but then the shape grew clearer, its form becoming more distinct, more real. A figure emerged from the darkness, a figure made of roots, stone, and shadow. It was taller than any man, its body long and lithe, shaped like a humanoid but with the eerie, twisting tendrils of roots creeping across its surface. Its face, if it could even be called a face, was a blank void, a dark mask of shifting shapes that seemed to dissolve and reappear with each breath. Eyes, glowing faintly like the embers of a fire, glared out from the hollow mask. The figure's body moved with a slow, deliberate motion, as though it had been waiting for this very moment. Waiting for you. You froze, your breath catching in your throat. This wasn't just the figment of your imagination. This was real, and it was standing right in front of you. The figure stepped forward, its movements fluid and unsettling, like the very earth was shifting beneath it. The roots seemed to bend around its form as though it was the center of the world itself. Its presence radiated power, something more ancient, more primal than anything you had ever known. It wasn't the forest itself, but something from beneath it. You have awakened me, The figure's voice resonated in your mind, its tone deep and echoing, like the sound of the earth shifting in the deepest of caverns. You have taken what was never meant for mortal hands. The earth calls to you, yes, but you are only the vessel. I am the one who has been waiting, buried deep beneath the roots. The realization hit you like a lightning bolt. This figure, this presence, was not just a part of the forest. It was its heart. The true power beneath the earth, the one that had been sealed away long before the forest had even begun to take shape. The roots, the trees, the soil, they were all extensions of it, but it was the figure before you, the creature beneath the surface, that held the true power. You think you have won, it continued, its voice soft, but with an edge of something far darker. You think you have sealed the creature away, but you have only woken the hunger beneath it. The forest needs a keeper, and now you have become mine. A wave of cold fear washed over you as the figure's glowing eyes locked onto yours. It wasn't just watching you, it was seeing you, all of you. It knew your thoughts, your fears, your desires. It knew that the power you had taken wasn't meant for a human to control. It knew that your weakness was its strength. The figure moved closer, its form growing clearer, more distinct with each step. Its roots twisted and writhed, stretching toward you, pulling you closer. And for the first time, you understood the truth. The forest had never been your ally. The earth had never been your friend. You were just a vessel, a puppet bound to the will of something far older, far more powerful than you could have ever imagined. You will never be free of it, the figure whispered. The earth has chosen you, but it will never let you go. You stumbled back, your heart pounding in your chest. The power of the earth had always been more than you had realized. It was never meant to be wielded by a mortal, never meant to be controlled. It had waited for centuries, buried beneath the surface, and now it had found a new keeper. The figure's roots stretched out, their tendrils wrapping around your legs, pulling you toward it. You could feel the coldness of its touch, the deep, suffocating weight of the earth's hunger pressing against you. And as it wrapped around you, pulling you deeper into the darkness, you realized the horrifying truth. The forest had claimed you, and there was no going back. The roots coiled around you with the inevitability of fate, pulling you deeper into the earth, into the embrace of something ancient and unknowable. The weight of the figure's presence pressed down on you, suffocating and relentless, like a shadow that had always been there, waiting for you to look into its depths. The roots, sharp and cold, scraped at your skin, but they did not feel like mere branches. They felt like fingers, ancient and sentient, moving with purpose. The world above you seemed to fade as the darkness of the cavern consumed you. The figure, now looming over you, was no longer just an embodiment of the earth's power. It was the earth itself, the very thing that had been buried beneath layers of time and soil, the force that had shaped the land for eons. It was the thing that had been waiting for a moment of weakness, a moment when the balance of nature could be shifted. You are mine now, the voice rumbled, its tone deeper than the earth's own heartbeat, more ancient than the mountains themselves. You have awakened the hunger beneath. You are not the keeper. You are the kept. The words echoed through your mind, each one like a hammer striking against the walls of your consciousness. Your body was no longer your own, held fast by the roots that had claimed you as their own. They were not just pulling you, they were infusing you, their cold energy crawling under your skin, creeping through your veins. The power of the earth was alive inside you, but it was no longer yours. It was the forest, the figures, and it was taking control. The cavern seemed to stretch before you, the stone walls melting away into an endless abyss of blackness. The roots around you writhed, twisting like serpents, their touch crawling beneath your flesh. It wasn't pain you felt, but something worse, loss. A slow, inexorable pull towards something other, something greater, but not human. Not alive in the way you understood. The earth's will, ancient and unyielding, was all-consuming. Do you feel it? The figure's voice was like a slow, inevitable thunder, echoing through your very bones. Do you feel the weight of your decision? The price of your victory? You tried to speak, to scream, but the words caught in your throat, drowned out by the growing hum of the earth's presence. The roots tightened, wrapping around your chest, your arms, your legs, but they were not just holding you, they were changing you, pulling you into the core of the earth's will. You were becoming part of it, part of something older than you could understand. The figure before you, made of roots, stone, and shadow, seemed to fade and merge with the cavern itself. Its glowing eyes, no longer eyes, but portals into an abyss, watched you with a hunger that felt almost satisfied, as though your fate had already been sealed. It was not the forest that was watching you now, it was the earth, and it was patient. You thought the creature beneath the roots was the enemy, the figure continued, its voice now a whisper in your mind. But it was only a sentinel, a guard keeping the true hunger at bay. Now it is free. You have released it. The forest is not just trees and roots. It is a living thing. It grows. It feeds. You could feel the earth beneath you shifting. The ground trembled, but it was not an earthquake. It was something far deeper, something that spoke through the roots, through the stone, through the air itself. The forest, the true forest, was beginning to awaken, its hunger stretching across the land. And now you were bound to it. You tried to resist, tried to fight back, but the power that coursed through you, the very force that had saved you, was now drowning you. The figure's roots reached further into your mind, sinking deeper with every passing second, pulling you into the heart of its hunger, into the center of its will. The earth was alive and it was consuming you. You were not just connected to it, you were becoming it. "What have you done?" you whispered, your voice hoarse, strained. The figure's laugh, low, reverberating through the walls of the cavern, answered you. "I did nothing. You chose this." The voice echoed, and you could feel it vibrating deep inside your very being. "You opened the door. Now you must walk through it. You are the keeper of the earth now, and yet you are also its prisoner. You belong to the hunger." The roots twisted further into your skin, your body reacting with a strange numbness. The edges of your vision blurred, and the world began to fracture. You could feel it, the pulse of the earth thrumming beneath your feet, in your veins. It was too much, too overwhelming. You were being consumed, your humanity slipping away into the abyss of the forest's true nature. The forest, the creature, it was all just a part of the same force, the same hunger, the same living, breathing entity that had always been there, waiting for someone to set it free. The figure loomed over you, its glowing eyes narrowing in silent judgment. You could see its face more clearly now, or what passed for a face, shifting, fluid, like the dark shape of the forest itself. Its expression was one of knowing, as though it had seen this before, as though it had waited for you for this moment. "This land has no place for humanity," the figure said, its voice reverberating through your mind. "You cannot fight what has always been. You cannot fight the earth." With that, the figure raised its hand, and the roots beneath you began to twist even more violently. You were pulled deeper into the earth's embrace, and though you screamed, there was no sound. There was only the pull of the earth, the weight of its will, its hunger. The darkness around you grew until there was nothing but the forest, nothing but the roots, and nothing but the hunger of the earth itself. And then the earth closed in on you, swallowing you whole. You were no longer just a part of the forest. You were the forest. You were the keeper. You were its hunger. The earth hummed around you, deep and constant, like the steady rhythm of a heartbeat. It pressed against you, inside you, flowing through your veins like a dark river. The roots twisted, but they didn't feel like foreign things anymore. They felt like part of you, stretching from your fingertips to the depths of your soul. The weight of the earth, its cold, infinite hunger, was now an overwhelming presence within you. It was not just a power you could wield, but a living force that had claimed you. The roots had found their vessel, their keeper, and now the forest itself was alive inside you. For the first time, you realized the full extent of what had happened. The earth had never truly been alive, not in the way you had once believed. It was not just soil or rock or trees. It was conscious, a vast and ancient being that had existed long before humanity. The forest, the creatures, the storms, all of it was connected in a way you had never understood. You had become a part of that great living being. And in return it had claimed you. It wasn't pain you felt, but something far worse. A deep, gnawing hollowness that stretched through your chest, a void that seemed to consume everything it touched. It was as if you were being pulled from the inside out. The roots, now part of your very being, pulsed with energy, their dark tendrils wrapping around your heart, pulling at your soul, drawing you deeper into their grasp. You could feel the earth's call, a whisper in your mind, deep and constant, urging you to surrender, to become it. "You belong to me now," the voice of the figure, the ancient presence, echoed in your mind, its tone like the sound of the earth shifting in the deepest caverns. "You are the keeper, but you are also the hunger. You are the earth's breath, the forest's will. There is no turning back from this. There is only the root." The world around you seemed to darken, the edges of your vision blurring as you felt the weight of the roots pressing deeper, their tendrils spreading through your limbs. Your body had become something other, a vessel for the earth's desire. You could feel the ancient hunger growing inside you, an insatiable force that pulsed with the power of the roots, the trees, the very stones of the earth itself. You were alive, but no longer in the way you once understood. You were part of the earth's will, a thing of darkness and growth, of life and death. The figure, the ancient being that had risen from the earth's depths, stepped closer, its glowing eyes focused on you with an intensity that sent a chill down your spine. Its face, its mask, shifted in the darkness, the shadows swirling around its hollow features as though it was becoming one with the land itself. You could feel it deep inside you, the connection between you, the figure, and the earth. You were no longer separate from it. You were part of it. You were becoming the root. "What is it that you fear?" the figure asked, its voice soft but carrying the weight of eternity. "Do you fear becoming one with the earth? Do you fear being the hunger you once fought so hard against? Or do you fear the emptiness that will swallow you when you resist?" The question lingered in your mind, unanswered. The hunger, the pull of the earth, was both all-consuming and inviting. It promised power, unity, and eternity. It promised an end to your struggles, an end to your pain. It promised peace, but peace at the cost of everything you had been. And yet, there was still a part of you that fought. The part of you that had once been human, the part that had struggled to survive, to keep your identity. But that part was growing smaller now, fading into the background of your mind, overshadowed by the constant presence of the roots, the earth, the forest. The hunger was insatiable, and it wasn't just a desire to survive. It was a need, an overwhelming need to consume, to grow, to become the forest, the earth itself. You reached out with your hands, your fingers trembling as they brushed against the roots that wound around your body. They pulsed with a life of their own, responding to your touch as if they could feel your inner turmoil. You were caught between two forces now, the call of the earth, the pull of the forest, and the remnants of your humanity, which seemed to be slipping away piece by piece. "There is no place for humans here," the figure's voice whispered, its presence like a shadow wrapping around you. "The forest is ancient. It has always been. And you were never meant to walk among it. You were never meant to walk away from it." You could feel the earth beneath you, its voice growing louder, more insistent. The roots around you were no longer just part of the landscape. They were part of you. They had woven themselves into your very being, and now you could feel them pulling at your thoughts, at your soul. The hunger was alive inside you. It was a part of you now. "Embrace it," the figure urged. "You are the root now. You are the forest. You are its hunger. You are its future." The darkness around you deepened, and the roots tightened their grip on you, dragging you deeper into the earth's embrace. You could feel the soil beneath you, the stones, the roots themselves, as if they were moving through your very being. You could feel the forest, its heartbeat, its breath. It was all alive. And now, so were you. In that moment, you realized something that shook you to the core. You were no longer human. The forest had claimed you, and you had become it. The power of the earth flowed through you, but so did its hunger, its unrelenting desire to grow, to consume. You had become the force you had once feared, the force you had tried to control. But what did that mean for you now? Would you embrace the root? Would you give yourself fully to the earth, to the forest? Or would you resist, even if it meant being destroyed by the very thing that had already taken you? The roots, the earth, the hunger, it was all inside you. You were part of it now. And the question lingered in your mind, gnawing at you. What would it mean to become the forest? To become the root? The earth was silent, yet within you the pulse of the forest raged. It was no longer just a hum, it was a pounding, a rhythmic beating that flowed through every fiber of your being. The hunger, the ancient force that had claimed you, thrummed deep in your chest, pushing, pulling, urging you to yield. You could feel the roots deep inside your mind, entangled in your thoughts, in your memories, weaving a web of connection that was both compelling and terrifying. You were no longer just a visitor in the forest. You were part of it. You were the root, its heartbeat, its hunger. The forest was not a place anymore. It was you, and you were it. And in the center of it all was the figure, the ancient force that had stirred from the depths, that had waited for eons for a soul to fall into its grasp. It stood before you now, a silhouette against the backdrop of the cavern, its glowing eyes locked onto yours with an intensity that felt like it could see through your very soul. Its voice, when it came, was not a whisper but a resonance, deep and low, vibrating through your very bones. "You have taken the first step," it intoned, its voice like the deep rumble of thunder rolling through the earth itself. "You have become the root. But this is only the beginning. The forest will grow. The hunger will spread. The world above will wither, and you will remain bound to the root. Forever." Your heart raced in your chest, not out of fear but out of something far more dangerous, desire. The power was so vast, so alive, that you could not help but feel the call of it, the beckoning whisper of the earth's ancient hunger. It was not a choice anymore. The decision had already been made the moment you had stepped into this place. The moment the roots had bound you, the forest had claimed you. The figure's eyes seemed to pierce deeper into you, as though reading every thought you tried to suppress. Its roots shifted in the air, stretching and curling like serpents, tracing patterns across the cavern walls. It was as if the very earth itself was moving, twisting in response to its will. And you, bound to the root, could feel every movement, every shift, as if your body was the extension of the forest's breath. You are not alone, it continued, its voice now softer, yet filled with an unmistakable command. The forest has awakened, but it will need you to carry its will. You will walk through the world, but not as you once did. You will walk as the root, and wherever you tread, the earth will follow. The trees will grow, the animals will stir, and the hunger will feed. You will be its keeper, but you will also be its prisoner. You could feel the truth of those words settling deep within you. You were the keeper, yes. You were the guardian of the forest, the earth's embodiment. But in that embodiment there was no freedom. The earth's hunger was a constant, gnawing force, and the more you embraced it, the less you would be able to resist. You had become a vessel for it, and vessels are meant to carry, but never to control. The forest's power was infinite, stretching beyond the walls of this cavern, beyond the borders of the land you had once known. And the more you felt it course through you, the more you realized how fragile your own sense of self had become. You were bound to the earth now, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally. Every thought you had was no longer just yours, it was shared with the forest, with the hunger, with the root. You cannot escape, the figure said again, its voice thick with certainty. There is no return to the world you knew. There is only the root. You have taken the power, but now the earth has claimed you. The cavern seemed to close in around you as the figure's words sank in. You were no longer just you. You were the earth, and the earth was you. Your heartbeat was no longer just a sound within you. It was the rhythm of the trees, the pull of the roots, the thrum of the earth's ancient will. You could feel it beneath your feet, stretching, writhing, pulling at you, calling you to surrender fully. A shiver ran down your spine as you felt the roots tighten around your chest, your limbs. They were not just holding you anymore. They were becoming you. Their energy was a part of your own, and you could feel the boundaries between the two beginning to blur. You could feel the earth itself beneath your skin, the soil pressing against your bones, the stone reaching deep into your soul. What do you seek, child of the root? The figure asked, its voice softening as it took a step closer. Do you seek to control it? To own the earth? You wanted to speak, but no words came. The question was a lie, a trick. The earth did not seek to be controlled. It sought to consume. The hunger was not a thing that could be held back. It was a force that could only be fed. It was a wildfire, a flood that would take everything in its path and leave only emptiness in its wake. And yet, as you stood there with the earth pulsing through you, you realized something. The power was yours to command. The forest, the roots, the creatures, they all answered to you now. The hunger, the deepest part of the earth, had become part of your will. And though it was hungry, though it was overwhelming, it was also yours. You closed your eyes, letting the power surge through you, feeling the very essence of the forest, of the earth, rising within your chest like a wave. The roots inside you seemed to stir, ready to break free and fill the world with their ancient hunger. You felt the pulse of the earth beneath your feet, the beat of the trees, the thrum of the soil. You were part of it all. The root was you. I am the root, you whispered, the words sounding strange, alien, yet somehow familiar, as if they had always been a part of you. The figure before you did not respond, but you felt it shift, its form melting into the shadows. You knew it was waiting, watching you. It was no longer a threat. It was a part of you now, a reminder of what you had become. The hunger was endless, and the power was yours to command. But the earth would never let you go. The hunger was insistent now, gnawing at the edges of your thoughts, a constant presence that could not be ignored. It was not a voice, not a whisper, but something much deeper, a pull from within the very fabric of your being. The earth had become your breath, the trees your thoughts, the roots your blood. The power surged inside you like wildfire, but it wasn't yours to control. It was the earth's, the forest's, and you were merely its vessel. But you had become something more than that. You had become the root. The figure before you, now a shifting, undulating mass of shadows and earth, watched with what could only be described as satisfaction. The glowing eyes that had once seemed so distant, so alien, were now mirrors of your own. You could see your reflection in them, yourself, but twisted, reshaped. The roots had bound you, but now they were growing through you, as if the forest itself was seeking to claim every inch of your soul. You have become what you feared, the figure spoke, its voice thick with the weight of millennia. The earth does not fear. It does not question. It simply is. And now so are you. It was not a comforting thought. It was not a gift. It was a burden, a curse wrapped in the guise of power. The hunger inside you was as alive as the forest itself, a force that was both part of you and outside of you, relentless in its drive to grow, to spread, to consume. And yet, you felt a strange peace in that hunger, a rightness that echoed through your veins. The earth had called you, had claimed you, and now you were part of its endless cycle. The hunger was not just a thing, it was a necessity. The forest needed to grow, needed to expand, needed to feed. And you were the one who would carry that need into the world above. The cavern around you seemed to pulse in response to the awakening of the root within you. The stone walls trembled, the roots twisted in time with the earth's heartbeat, and the very air felt charged with the raw power of the land. The hunger was deep, but it was not without direction. It had a purpose, and you could feel that purpose beginning to take shape. The figure moved toward you, its form both massive and ethereal, as if it was made of shadow and earth. It did not walk. It floated, its tendrils of root-like appendages reaching out and wrapping around your body like a cloak. The forest around you seemed to draw closer, as if the very earth was pulling you into itself, binding you tighter with each passing second. The world above is fragile, the figure continued, its voice deepening, becoming a low vibration in your chest. It has been long since the earth has felt the weight of true power. You have awakened something that cannot be undone. The hunger has been unleashed. The realization hit you again. This was not just the forest that had been awakened. It was the earth itself. The roots, the trees, the soil, the creatures, all of it was alive, all of it was connected. And now you were the conduit, the living embodiment of the earth's will. The hunger was part of you, and it would drive you forward, pulling at your every step, urging you to spread the forest's reach to feed its thirst. You have been chosen. The figure's voice was almost a sigh, as if it had waited for this moment for eons. But the world above is not prepared for you. It is fragile. It will break. The hunger surged inside you, a flood of desire so intense that it nearly suffocated you. The power was overwhelming, and yet there was something enticing about it. The idea of spreading the roots across the world, of growing the forest until it was the only thing left, consumed every thought you had. The forest would thrive, would envelop the world, would reclaim what had been taken from it. And you would be its agent. You are the keeper of the hunger, the figure murmured, its eyes narrowing as they met yours. But the forest is not just alive. It is old, and it will consume you. In the end, you will be no more than a part of the root, a thread in its endless weave. There is no escape. The words should have frightened you, but they didn't. They called to you, resonating deep in your chest. The forest, the earth, it was all part of a cycle that would never end. The roots would spread, would grow, and you would lead them. But you would also be consumed. The forest would consume everything, until there was nothing left but its endless reach. The figure raised one of its limbs, and you felt the ground beneath you tremble, the roots stirring around you like a living thing. You were no longer standing in the cavern. You were standing inside it, inside the forest, inside the earth's very heart. The power surged again, stronger than before, and you felt yourself shifting, becoming more than just a body. You were becoming the earth. It has begun, the figure whispered, and you felt the earth begin to move beneath you, the roots twisting, the trees reaching. The forest was waking, and you were its first breath. The world around you seemed to shift, and in that moment you could see the forest as it truly was, not just the trees, not just the earth, but the hunger that pulsed beneath it all. The roots stretched across the land, reaching for cities, for fields, for villages. It was spreading, and it was hungry, and you were the one who would feed it. You are not free, the figure whispered, its voice now a hollow echo in your mind. You are the root. You are the hunger. You could feel it. The pull of the forest, the weight of the earth's will, the desire to spread, to consume, to grow. The earth was alive, and now so were you. You were the keeper, but you were also captive to the hunger. And as you stepped forward, the roots moved with you, bending to your will, guiding you toward the world above, where the forest's hunger would be fed. But what would be left of the world when it was done? Would there be anything left but the root? The ground beneath you felt different now, alive in a way that was almost suffocating. The roots pulsed with an energy that was no longer just power, but something far deeper, more primal. You could feel it pressing against you, through you. The forest wasn't just a place anymore, it was inside you, a living, breathing entity that had claimed you as its own. The hunger that had begun as a whisper was now a relentless force, a gnawing, infinite need that grew with every breath you took. Every thought you had was tainted by it, every movement you made guided by it. The roots, once foreign and strange, had become a part of your very being. They were no longer separate from you. They were you. You could feel the earth shifting beneath your feet as the roots spread deeper into the cavern, growing, expanding with each passing second. The air was thick, heavy with the smell of damp soil and decay. The forest was stirring, its ancient will beginning to stretch beyond the borders of this place, reaching toward the surface to the world above. It was ready to feed, and you, as its keeper, were its instrument. The time is near, the figure's voice echoed in your mind, though it was no longer just a voice. It was the earth's voice, the ancient, eternal presence that had shaped everything around you. The world will soon know what it means to awaken the root. The hunger will spread. The earth will reclaim what has been taken. The words filled you with a strange sense of both fear and anticipation. There was no going back now. The forest had already started to stretch its tendrils beyond this hidden cavern. The hunger was no longer just a part of you, it was you. You could feel it in every fiber of your being, thrumming through your veins, urging you to feed, to grow, to consume. The earth's will had no place for hesitation. There was only the call of the root, and its call was louder now than it had ever been. You could feel the figure's presence moving around you, like the shadow of the earth itself, its form shifting and changing in the dim light. Its eyes, those ancient pools of light, were fixed on you, watching as you stood there, caught between the hunger and the humanity that still lingered within you. For a fleeting moment, you thought you could feel the fragments of your past, your life before the forest, your sense of self, like a small ember fighting against the encroaching darkness. But it was fading. You still struggle, the figure observed, its voice soft, almost sympathetic. You think you can resist, but the earth has no use for resistance. It only needs you to walk its path, to feed its hunger. And you will. The roots around you twitched as if in agreement. They stirred beneath your skin, wrapping tighter, pulsing with a strange sense of urgency. You were not just a part of the forest now. You were the forest, and the forest was hungry. The power within you was overwhelming, but it was also a curse, an unrelenting force that would never allow you to be free. You could feel the weight of the earth's hunger pressing down on you, urging you to move, to act, to carry out the will of the root. What will you do now? The figure asked, its voice softening but filled with a cold certainty. Will you fight the hunger even as it consumes you? Or will you embrace your fate as the keeper of the root? The words haunted you. You could feel the struggle within you, the remnants of your humanity clinging desperately to the edges of your consciousness. You had once fought to survive, to keep your identity, your freedom. But now it felt as though that struggle was slipping away, like a fading dream. The hunger was far more powerful than anything you had ever known. It was the root of all things, the force that shaped the world itself. It was alive, and you were a part of it. You could feel the roots deep in your soul, stretching outward, reaching toward the world above. The forest was awakening. It was no longer just a collection of trees and soil. It was a force, a living, breathing entity that would reshape the world. And you were the one who would lead it. The ground beneath you rumbled again, and the walls of the cavern trembled with the force of the awakening earth. The roots twisted, reaching out like dark fingers, pulling you toward them. You could feel the pull, the call of the root, growing stronger, becoming inevitable. You are the keeper, the figure's voice reverberated through your very being. You are the earth's agent, and when the hunger calls, you will answer. There is no turning back. The roots, the forest, the hunger, it was all inside you now, an inescapable force that would drive you forward, that would consume everything. You were no longer just a human being. You were a vessel, a servant of the root, the earth's hunger, its will. You could feel it growing within you, taking over, shaping you into something else, something other. And still, there was a part of you that resisted. A part of you that clung to the remnants of your past life, of your humanity. But that part was fading now, as the hunger became more powerful, more all-consuming. The forest was calling, and you were the one who would answer. Embrace it, the figure whispered, and you could feel the pull of the earth growing stronger, deeper. Embrace the root, for it is your destiny. You are the hunger now. You are the root. And in that moment, you realized the full weight of what had been asked of you. The world above was fragile. The forest, the root, would soon consume it. The hunger would spread, and there would be nothing left but the earth's endless, unyielding desire to grow, to feed, to become. You were no longer just a part of the forest. You were the forest. You were the root. And there was no going back. The hunger had claimed you, and now you would feed it. The earth felt colder now, more alive, as if it was watching you, waiting for the moment when you would fully succumb to its will. You were the root now, and the weight of that realization settled deep within your chest, a burden that you could not shake off. The hunger, that ancient, gnawing force, was more than just a feeling now. It was a presence, an overwhelming entity that took root in your very soul, driving you forward, guiding your every step. You could feel it, the pulse of the earth beneath your feet, like a heartbeat that echoed in your chest. It was the rhythm of the forest, of the trees, of the very land itself, and you were its conduit. It was not just a power you had inherited, it was a need, an insatiable hunger that had claimed you. The roots were no longer just a part of the forest. They were inside you, wrapping around your thoughts, pulling you in every direction, pushing you toward the inevitable. You have been chosen, the figure's voice whispered, though it sounded distant, as if it was not speaking from anywhere within the cavern anymore. It was the earth itself, and its voice was now a hum within your very being. You are the keeper, the harbinger of the root. The forest will grow, it will feed, and there will be nothing left of what came before. There was no fear in the figure's words, only certainty, certainty that you would carry out the will of the earth. The hunger was not a choice, it was inevitable. You could feel it now, the weight of your role, the responsibility that had been thrust upon you. The forest had always been patient, but it was no longer waiting. It was growing, stretching, reaching toward the surface, toward the world above. And you were its instrument. As the roots twisted within you, the earth's will began to pulse through your veins with an urgency that you had not felt before. The hunger was rising, surging upward through your body, and you could hear it now in your mind. The forest was calling, calling for you to move, to act. The figure, the embodiment of the earth's power, had already begun to fade, as though its presence was no longer needed. The forest did not need guidance anymore. It was alive and it would grow on its own. You were the keeper, but now you were also a servant, a vessel for the hunger that would soon consume the world above. You stepped forward, the ground beneath you trembling in response to your movement. The roots stirred, their presence growing stronger, spreading further into your mind, wrapping around your thoughts like cold fingers. You could feel the earth's pulse growing louder, its rhythm syncing with the beating of your heart. The hunger was here and it was everywhere, in the soil beneath your feet, in the air that filled your lungs, in the very breath you took. You could feel the earth's will shaping you, transforming you into something other, something far removed from the person you had once been. What will you become? The figure's voice echoed again, and you realized that it was not speaking to you directly, but to the forest, to the earth itself. It was a question with no answer, a statement that was more of an invitation to the unknown, to the darkness that loomed just beyond your reach. The hunger that had claimed you would soon claim the world. You reached out, your hands trembling as you felt the roots pulse beneath your skin. It was as though you were no longer in control of your own body. The forest had taken you, and now you were simply the vessel through which its power would flow. You could hear the faint whispers of the earth in your mind, faint at first but growing louder. It was alive and it was asking you to feed. You could feel the weight of the roots growing, spreading through your body, wrapping tighter, constricting around your very soul. The hunger was not something that could be sated. It was endless. It was a force that would consume everything, every living thing, every building, every stone. The world was fragile, and it had already begun to crack under the weight of the forest's desire to grow. You could feel the cracks spreading now, deep beneath the earth's surface, the land shifting in response to the hunger's call. The world above was vulnerable, unaware of the force that was about to consume it. A surge of power coursed through you, and you found yourself standing in the heart of the cavern, your arms stretched wide as if to welcome the earth's call. The roots wrapped around you, pulling you down into the earth itself, as if to bind you to its eternal rhythm. You were no longer just a part of the forest. You were the forest. You were the root, and the root had no end. The hunger will feed, the figure's voice said again, this time softer, like a whisper in the wind. You will lead it. You will lead it to the surface, to the world that has forgotten what it means to be alive. You will be the harbinger. You could feel the earth's power growing within you, surging, building, until it was all you could hear, all you could feel. The hunger was a force that could never be tamed, only fed. The roots grew, twisted, stretched, reaching out toward the surface. They were alive, and they were calling for the world to open, to surrender. And you were the one who would lead them. You were the one who would open the world to the earth's will, to its endless hunger. The air grew thick with the weight of the forest's presence, the roots tightening around you until they were no longer separate from your body. They were you. You were them. And you could feel the earth's breath, the sound of the trees growing, of the land shifting beneath your feet. It was as though the world was holding its breath, waiting for what was to come. The roots were no longer just under your skin. They were inside you, in your thoughts, in your very soul. The world will fall, the figure whispered one final time, as if to confirm the inevitability of what was happening. And you will be its keeper. You will be its hunger. And with that, the earth's will took over. The roots surged, pulling you toward the surface, toward the world that was waiting to be consumed. The hunger had claimed you, and now it would claim everything. There would be no escape. Only the root. Only the forest. Only the hunger. The roots surged like a rising tide, thick and unrelenting, pulsing through the very fabric of your being. They moved with an intensity that mirrored the earth's heartbeat, a rhythm so deep and primal that it shook you to the core. You could feel every inch of the forest, every leaf, every branch, every stone, stirring in response as if they too were awakening, stretching out after an eternity of slumber. You were no longer a person. You were the root, the hunger, and the earth itself was your domain. The air was thick with the scent of damp soil and ancient decay. The very atmosphere seemed to vibrate with energy, as if the land itself was holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable. The hunger was no longer a whisper. It was a roar, a consuming force that gnawed at every corner of your mind, urging you forward, guiding you toward the surface. "It is time," the figure's voice echoed once more, though it was now distant, like a fading memory. You could feel its presence lingering, but it no longer needed to speak. The earth had taken you, and it was now your turn to lead. The hunger that had been born within you was a part of you, and you could feel it expanding, stretching beyond your control, becoming more than just a physical force. It was a part of the world, an unstoppable tide that would reclaim the land it had once known. You stepped forward, the ground trembling beneath your feet. The cavern that had once seemed so vast now felt small, confined. The walls, the ceiling, the very air, all of it was closing in as though the earth was pressing in on you from all sides. The root was awakening, and the world above was vulnerable. The roots moved, twisting through the rock and stone, reaching for the surface. You could feel the earth's pulse quicken, the land responding to the beckoning call of the hunger. The soil churned beneath you, and you felt the first tremors beneath the surface. The surface was no longer a place that belonged to those who had once walked upon it. It was the domain of the forest, of the earth, of the root. And now you were its guide. The hunger surged within you, filling every inch of your being. The earth had taken root in your soul, and it would not be satisfied until the world above had been consumed. The roots stretched, pulling you forward, pushing you toward the surface. You could feel the weight of the earth's will, heavy and unyielding, pressing down on your chest, forcing you to move. "The surface is not prepared," the figure's voice rumbled again, softer now, as though it was speaking from far away. "But you will open the way. The roots will spread and the world will fall. The hunger will consume everything. It is inevitable." You moved, the roots curling around you like an embrace, guiding you through the soil, through the earth's core. The surface was so close now, and you could feel it calling to you. The air above was thin, cold, but it would not remain that way for long. You were the harbinger, the keeper of the earth's hunger, and you would feed it. The earth beneath you shifted, and for the first time, you felt the weight of what was to come. The hunger was not just a force. It was a living thing, a tide that had been held back for too long. You could feel it stirring, rising beneath the surface, ready to burst forth. The land was cracking, the roots stretching like fingers reaching through the soil. The earth was awakening, and so were you. You could see the light of the surface now, faint and distant, filtering through the cracks in the soil. The roots writhed beneath you, twisting, contorting, moving with an energy that was both frightening and exhilarating. The hunger was a fire within you, a flame that could not be extinguished. It would consume everything. You reached the surface, and the roots broke through, tearing through the soil, pushing aside the earth itself. The land cracked open, and for the first time you saw the world above. The sky was dark, heavy with clouds, and the wind howled, carrying with it the scent of rain and earth. The surface was still, unaware of the force that was about to be unleashed. But you knew. You knew what was coming. The hunger was here, and it would not be stopped. The roots reached out, spreading like wildfire, as though the earth itself was breaking free. The hunger was no longer a whisper. It was a roar, a call that would consume everything in its path. You stepped forward, and with every step, the roots spread further, entwining with the earth, the soil, the land. The trees began to stir, their branches moving like dark, twisting fingers, reaching toward the sky. The forest was alive, and you were its keeper, its guide. The hunger rose within you, and with it came the power to shape the land, to feed the forest's desire. The roots dug deeper, tearing through the earth, cracking open the ground. The sky above seemed to darken as the forest began to take hold, stretching its tendrils across the world. "The world will fall," the figure's voice echoed in your mind once more, this time a distant whisper. "It will crumble beneath the weight of the root, and you will watch as it consumes all that is fragile." You stood at the heart of it all now, the earth's pulse, the forest's breath, the root's hunger. The surface was vulnerable, and it would soon be consumed. The trees began to twist and grow, their branches stretching outward, reaching toward the sky. The earth itself seemed to shift, the very ground trembling beneath your feet. You were the root now, and the root was unstoppable. The air was thick with the scent of earth, damp and alive as the ground trembled beneath your feet. The roots stretched outward, snaking through the soil, tearing through the surface like claws that sought to claim the world above. The forest was no longer something far away, something distant. It was here, alive and stirring as if it had never been dormant at all. You felt the pulse of the earth, the hunger thrumming in your chest, resonating through every part of your being. The hunger had been a slow burn at first, a whisper deep within you that called out to the earth, urging you to embrace it. But now, as the roots tore through the earth and the sky darkened above you, the hunger was consuming, growing, devouring, unstoppable. The land was shifting beneath your feet, cracks spreading like veins across the surface. The world was no longer safe. It was already being reclaimed, its fragile skin peeling back to reveal the raw, beating heart of the earth. You could feel the roots twisting around you, pulling at you with an almost violent intensity. They were no longer just a part of the forest. They were you. You were no longer a person standing on the earth. You were the earth, the very force that was awakening beneath you, the hunger that had lain dormant for so long. The trees above began to stir, their branches snapping and crackling as they grew with an alarming speed. The wind howled around you, but it was not the sound of a storm. It was the voice of the forest, calling, pulling, demanding that the world yield to it. You could feel the shift as the roots began to reach up, drawing closer to the surface, pulling you forward, pushing you toward the world above. The hunger was no longer something you could suppress. It was a fire that burned within your very core, an insatiable desire that could only be fed by the land itself. You were its keeper, its servant, its harbinger, but you were also its prisoner. You could feel the weight of its power pressing down on you, reshaping you, turning you into something else. The forest had claimed you, and now it was turning you into something that belonged to it. The surface was no longer a place of freedom. It was a place of feeding. The roots burst forth from the earth with a force so strong that the ground shook violently beneath you. The trees were now towering giants, their roots breaking through the surface like fingers clawing at the sky. The land began to change, the familiar shape of the world warping as the forest spread its tendrils across it. The hunger was insatiable, and it was only just beginning. The world above, once so full of life and light, was now vulnerable, a canvas for the forest's hunger. The cities, the fields, the mountains, everything was now in the path of the root. The hunger would not stop. It would grow, spread, consume. The land would be reborn, reshaped, twisted into something new, something alive. But in that rebirth, everything that had once been would be lost. You stepped forward, your feet sinking into the soft, shifting soil. The roots twisted around your body, pulling you deeper into the earth, guiding you toward the surface. You could feel the power now, the full weight of the forest will coursing through your veins, pulling you onward, urging you to feed. There was no turning back. You had already been claimed by the earth, and now you would claim the world in its name. The root has awakened. The figure's voice echoed in your mind, now softer, like a whisper in the wind. The hunger will spread, and the surface will become what the earth desires. It will be reborn in the image of the root. The world will fall, and you will lead it. The words echoed through your mind like a spell, and with them, the weight of your new purpose settled in your chest. You were no longer a person with hopes and dreams. You were the root, the force that would reshape the world. The hunger was a part of you, a force that would drive you to feed, to grow, to consume. The wind began to shift, howling louder now as the sky darkened, casting long shadows across the land. The first drops of rain fell, but they were not like the soft patter of a gentle storm. These were heavy, like tears from the earth itself, the beginning of a cleansing, a purging of all that had come before. The forest was not merely growing, it was raging, tearing through the land, devouring everything in its path. The trees began to reach toward the sky, their branches twisting and stretching, as though they could feel the pull of the earth's hunger. The very air seemed to thicken with the scent of wet earth, and the sound of cracking would echoed in your ears as the forest surged with life. You were no longer just a witness to this transformation. You were the one who would guide it, the one who would feed the hunger, the one who would lead the world into the darkness. You could feel the earth shifting beneath you, the roots rising like serpents, pulling at the soil, tearing through the land. The hunger was alive. It was growing, spreading, feeding. The cities that once dotted the landscape, the fields that stretched across the plains, the mountains that had stood for millennia, they were vulnerable, already dying, already becoming a part of the root. You could feel it. You could see it. The world was being devoured. The earth had claimed it, and now the hunger would do what it was meant to do. The roots reached higher, spreading through the surface, and the sky above seemed to darken even more, as though the very heavens themselves were succumbing to the forest's will. The trees grew faster now, their branches entwining with one another, creating a canopy that blotted out the light. The world was no longer familiar. It was becoming something new, something alive, alive with the hunger of the root. You could feel it now, the pull of the hunger stronger than ever. It was not just a part of you anymore, it was you. The forest was alive within you, and you were alive within it. The hunger had claimed you, and now you would lead it to devour the world above. The surface will fall, the figure's voice whispered once more, a distant murmur that felt both close and far away. And you will watch as the hunger consumes everything. There will be no escape, only the root, only the forest. And as you stood in the midst of the awakening world, the hunger surged through you once more, and you knew that the world was no longer a place of hope, of light, of life. It was a place for the root, for the hunger, for the forest that would consume everything in its path. You were the root now, and the world would be reborn. The rain fell in heavy, unrelenting sheets, a cascade of water that mixed with the soil, turning the earth beneath you into a thick, viscous mud. But it did not matter. The forest was alive, and it was no longer concerned with the rain or the world above. It was awakening, and with each passing moment, it stretched its reach further into the surface, spreading its roots deep into the land. The hunger had become an unstoppable force, and it was growing, feeding, consuming. Your body felt heavy with the weight of the earth's will, as though the very ground beneath you had become a part of you, a part of your soul, a part of your essence. The roots twisted around your legs, your arms winding through your chest like veins, like arteries that carried the forest's blood. You could feel every inch of the earth's power, feel it pulsing beneath your skin. It was not just in you, it was you. The world above was now within reach. The cities, the villages, the fields, they were all so fragile, so susceptible to the hunger that was spreading beneath them. The roots were breaking through the soil, tearing up the streets, cracking open the earth, opening up the world to the root's insatiable desire. The forest was alive, and it would reclaim everything. The root is spreading, the figure's voice whispered again, though it was no longer something you could truly hear. It was a presence, a feeling that echoed within the earth itself. The surface is crumbling, and soon the hunger will fill every crevice, every crack, every corner. There will be nothing left but the root. You could feel the earth's pulse, the heartbeat of the forest, reverberating through the air, through the ground, through your very being. It was inescapable now. There was no more fear, no more hesitation. You were the keeper, the harbinger of the root, and you would not only witness the world's end, you would guide it. The hunger was not a choice. It was not something that could be reasoned with or resisted. The forest was inevitable. The roots twisted around you, dragging you deeper into the soil, deeper into the earth, pulling you toward the heart of the root. There was no longer any distinction between you and the forest. You were part of it, and it was part of you. Your movements, your thoughts, your very being were one with the land, with the hunger that grew beneath it. The surface was breaking apart beneath the weight of the forest's growth, the roots snaking through cities, homes, fields. The earth groaned under the pressure, as though it was crying out in relief, in release. It had long been waiting for this moment. In the distance, you could see the trees begin to shift, their trunks thickening, their branches twisting together as though they were merging, becoming something greater than they had ever been before. The forest was growing, and as it grew, so did the roots. They spread like wildfire, tearing through the land, suffocating everything in their path. The hunger had begun its feast, and nothing would escape it. The root is endless. The figure's voice echoed in your mind again, but now, it sounded far more distant, as if it had been swept away by the growing roar of the forest. It will consume all, and when the surface is nothing but a memory, it will begin again. The hunger will never cease. It will grow, and you will lead it. You could feel the power surge inside you, coursing through every part of you. The hunger was not just a force. It was a need, a desire that could not be quenched, a longing that had always been there, buried deep within the earth. It had taken root in the soil long ago, and now it was reaching upward, demanding to be fed. And you were the one who would feed it. The trees continued to grow, their canopies expanding, swallowing the sky. The roots spread outward, wrapping around buildings, homes, roads, tearing them apart as they spread across the landscape like an unstoppable wave. The hunger was not confined to the earth. It was consuming the very air, the very light that had once separated the surface from the darkness below. And as the roots reached upward, you felt yourself drawn deeper into the center of the forest, as if the earth itself was guiding you toward its final goal. You felt a sense of purpose now, not one born from your will, but from the earth's. The hunger had claimed you, and you were nothing more than the tool it used to spread. The forest was not just a place. It was an extension of you, of everything you had become. The surface above was no longer yours to protect. It was already dying, becoming part of the root. The sky had darkened completely now, the sun hidden behind a blanket of clouds, the world cast in an eternal dusk. The air was thick with the scent of earth, of wet foliage, and the distant rumble of thunder. The wind carried with it the cries of the earth, as if it too were mourning what was being lost. But it did not matter. There was no going back. The hunger was unstoppable. The roots were alive and they were consuming. As the roots reached the cities, they tore through the streets like lightning, their dark tendrils wrapping around buildings, ripping them from their foundations. Cars and houses were crushed under the weight of the forest growth, swallowed whole by the earth that had once been still. The people, the life that had once walked the surface, were no more than an afterthought, their struggles silent as the hunger continued to feast. The forest was alive, and it would continue to grow until there was nothing left to devour. The ground shifted beneath you, and for a moment, you felt a strange sensation, a kind of satisfaction, as if you were part of something greater than yourself. The forest, the root, the hunger, they were not just forces. They were destiny. And you were the one who would guide them, who would lead them to the end of the world. You could see it now, the sprawling canopy of trees, the roots stretching deep beneath the surface, pushing through the remains of the cities and the land. The world was becoming one with the forest. The hunger had taken over, and it would not stop until everything was consumed. The root is the end, the figure whispered once more, its voice barely audible above the roar of the forest. The surface will fall, and all will be reborn in the image of the root. And you will be its keeper, its guide, until there is nothing left but the hunger. And as you stood there, watching the forest consume the world above, you realized that you had become the hunger. The root was no longer just a force. It was you, and you were its endless will, its agent of change, its hunger. The world had fallen. The root had claimed it. And now there was only one thing left to do: feed. The sky above, now a heavy curtain of dark clouds, seemed to collapse upon itself, casting everything beneath it in perpetual twilight. The wind carried with it the faint scent of damp soil, mingled with the acrid smell of decay as the roots spread further into the world. The world had changed. No, it had been remade. The surface that once seemed so familiar, so full of life and movement, was now a place swallowed by the endless hunger of the earth. The cities that once hummed with energy, the fields that swayed with crops, the homes that offered shelter, all gone, consumed by the root, consumed by the forest's call. The earth beneath you had become your entire reality. You could no longer hear the distant hum of humanity's existence. The sounds of construction, the chatter of voices, the roar of cars, they were no more. There was only the soft thrum of the roots in the soil, the unyielding whisper of the forest growing, ever growing, as the surface around you disappeared into the earth's embrace. Nothing was left untouched. Even the sky above seemed to yield, as the thick canopy of twisted trees blocked out any remnants of daylight. The hunger devoured it all, leaving only the eternal living forest in its wake. You felt it in every movement, in every breath, the presence of the root inside you. It was no longer a separate entity, a force beyond comprehension. It was you. The pulse of the earth was your pulse. The hunger that consumed the world was your hunger. The roots were in your veins, curling through your flesh like vines, binding you to the land, to the forest, to the endless growth. It wasn't just a physical connection anymore. It was something deeper, something more profound. The root was your essence, and you were its eternal vessel. You are the keeper, the figure's voice echoed in your mind, a distant echo now, but still present, still guiding. You are the hunger, the guide. The root is alive, and it will never cease. The world will never return to what it once was. The hunger inside you roared in response. It wasn't a voice, a sound. It was the deepest, most primal call reverberating through the earth itself, as though every root, every leaf, every tree was calling to you, urging you to feed. The land would never know peace again. The cycle had been set into motion, and now, it was an inevitable force that could never be undone. The earth was no longer just a place to live. It was now a hunger, an entity, and it was consuming. You moved through the shifting terrain, your feet sinking into the soft, wet soil. The ground beneath you trembled, and for a moment, you could hear the trees groan as they stretched and grew. The roots twisted and contorted beneath you, wrapping around the bones of the world, tightening their grip on everything that had once been fragile. The world above was gone, consumed by the forest's hunger, and in its place, a new world was being born. One of endless growth, of feeding, of the roots' eternal reign. Above, the trees stretched, their towering forms reaching up into the sky, branches intertwining in a dark, twisted tapestry that blotted out the stars. The roots spread deep beneath the surface, carving their way through the earth, drawing life from the world that had been. They were growing faster, stronger, like a storm that had been unleashed. The hunger was no longer a slow, creeping force. It was a wildfire, consuming everything in its path. You could feel the weight of it now, the full, crushing weight of your transformation. The humanity that had once defined you, the memories that had once made you feel alive were slipping away, replaced by the endless need of the root. The forest was alive, and it had claimed you as its own. You were no longer an individual, a person with desires and fears. You were the root itself, an extension of the hunger, of the earth's will, of the forest that would never stop growing. The hunger will spread, the figure's voice continued, now so faint it felt like a fading dream. The earth will claim what is left, and soon there will be no memory of what came before. Only the root, only the hunger. You will guide it until there is nothing left to consume. You will feed the root, and the root will feed the world. The world above had collapsed into the earth, becoming one with the forest, becoming one with you. There was no more distinction between surface and below. The world had merged with the root, and the root was everywhere. The earth was no longer still, no longer quiet. It was a throbbing, living thing, constantly shifting, constantly growing, feeding. There was no rest. There was no end. There was only the hunger, the constant, insatiable drive to grow, to consume, to reshape. You could see the remnants of what once was, the broken skeletons of buildings, the rusted remnants of vehicles, the decaying husks of homes. They were now part of the root, part of the forest's insatiable desire. The hunger that had taken over the world had turned it into something entirely different, something alive. You could hear the ground beneath you groan, as though the earth itself was sighing in satisfaction, relishing in the victory of its reclamation. But still, the hunger was not satisfied. You could feel it within you, gnawing at your very soul, urging you to go further, to feed more. The forest, the root, was never full. It never ceased. It would always grow. The world that had once thrived with humanity was now a memory, an echo in the roots, in the forest. There was no going back, no return to what had been. The root had claimed the surface, and it would grow until there was no more land to claim. The sky above would be nothing but a shroud of branches, the air thick with the scent of wet earth and the endless sound of the forest's growth. "You are the keeper," the figure whispered again, but now, its presence was barely there, fading like the last embers of a fire. "You are the keeper of the root, and the root will never stop." And you understood now. The hunger would never be satisfied. The root would continue to grow, to consume, to reshape. And you, as its keeper, would guide it to the end of the world, to the end of all things. The hunger was eternal. The root was eternal. And you were the root. The forest stretched out as far as the eye could see, endless, unbroken, and alive with an energy that felt almost ancient, a primal force that had always been waiting, buried deep beneath the surface, until it was ready to awaken. The land had been consumed by the hunger, and now it was being remade in the root's image. What had once been the surface, cities, fields, roads, homes, was now a sprawling living canopy, a chaotic tapestry of tangled branches, twisting roots, and the rhythmic pulse of growth that surged from the heart of the earth. The hunger never slept. It never stopped. It simply fed, and the world transformed under its unyielding will. The roots beneath you, the ones that had once been nothing more than the foundation of the forest, now pulsed with a terrifying life of their own. They stretched and twisted, reaching far beyond the limits of the forest's old borders, burrowing deep into the heart of the land. You could feel them vibrating through your skin, through your bones, like an invisible web connecting everything. The earth had been reborn, but not in the way you once thought possible. It was now a land that fed only the root, a land alive with hunger, an eternal force that sought to consume everything in its path. You stood at the center of it all, no longer just a witness to the destruction, but the embodiment of it. You had been changed, reshaped by the very forest that now surrounded you. The roots had taken hold in your body, your soul, and now you were bound to them. There was no escaping it. You had become part of the root, its keeper, its harbinger, its eternal servant. "You are the keeper of the hunger," the voice of the figure whispered, distant yet immediate in your mind, as though it was not speaking to you directly, but to the forest, to the land itself. You have guided it, you have fed it, and now it will continue its endless growth. The forest had claimed the world. The surface, the world of light, of life, of human endeavor, had been swallowed whole by the insatiable hunger of the root. What had been vibrant and bustling with energy was now a decaying memory, slowly being devoured by the dark forest. Cities had collapsed beneath the weight of the earth's hunger. Their once proud towers and roads were now buried under layers of soil, roots, and branches that reached to the sky like twisted fingers, blocking out the sun, covering the stars. The air had thickened, the atmosphere weighed down by the endless green, the scent of earth and decay blending into a smell that was as intoxicating as it was suffocating. The once clear skies were now obscured, drowned beneath a canopy of leaves that seemed to reach for eternity. The world had become a shadow of its former self, shrouded in a perpetual dusk with no sign of hope, only the endless growth of the forest. The roots beneath you were alive. They moved, they pulsed, they grew. The land was no longer stagnant. It was a body, a vast, sprawling organism that breathed, that thrived on the life it had claimed. And within it, you felt your own body change. You could feel your thoughts twisting, warping, as the hunger consumed you. Your very essence was being reformed into something that belonged to the root. The sense of individuality, of self, was slowly fading, replaced by the primal call of the earth, by the all-consuming will of the root. You are the will of the earth, the figure's voice continued, echoing softly in your mind. The root has always existed, hidden beneath the surface, waiting for its time to emerge. Now it will never stop. It will grow, it will feed, and it will take all that once was. And you are its vessel. The transformation was complete. No longer could you remember the person you had once been. The memories, the desires that had defined you, had been stripped away like bark from a tree. You were now a part of the forest, part of the hunger that would never be satisfied. The roots twisted around you, binding you to the earth, pulling you deeper into the soil. You could feel them reaching, burrowing deep into the core of the land, drawing up whatever remains of the old world, turning it into fuel for the forest's insatiable growth. The earth was alive in ways you had never understood, alive with a hunger that consumed, and would continue to consume until there was nothing left. The world was being reborn, but it was not a birth of life. It was a birth of devouring. The forest's hunger would never cease. It would never rest. It would grow until the surface, until everything that had been before was no more. And you would continue to guide it. What will remain when all is gone? You wondered, though the question felt foreign now, as though it no longer mattered. What had been before, light, hope, life, was lost to the roots, to the hunger. The world would never be the same again. The air was heavy with the scent of rot and growth, the pulse of the roots beneath the surface like the beat of a heart that could never slow. The land had been consumed, and the surface was no more than a shadow, a fading memory. All that was left now was the forest, its endless hunger, and you, the keeper, the one who would continue to guide it, to feed it, to watch as it grew and consumed, until the end of all things. The sky above was dark, blanketed by the dense leaves, and the ground beneath you rumbled as if in agreement. The forest was alive, and its hunger had no end. You were the hunger now. You were the root. Time itself had become a distant, forgotten concept. The sky, once a place of endless blue and shifting clouds, was now a constant shroud, a blanket of darkness and twisted limbs, woven together by the relentless growth of the trees. The air was still, save for the faint rustling of leaves, the deep, guttural sounds of roots pressing through the earth, claiming more ground, more life. The hunger, that insatiable force that had once been a distant whisper in the back of your mind, was now the very pulse of the world. You could feel it in every movement of the forest, in every tremor beneath your feet. The earth beneath you had become a living thing, breathing, pulsating with a force that felt both terrifying and inevitable. You had become so deeply entangled with the forest, with the hunger, that the world outside of it felt like a dream, faint, hazy, and distant. The surface was gone. There was no trace of it now. No remnants of the cities, the fields, the homes. They had been consumed, broken down, swallowed whole by the roots. The soil had been turned to dust, the very air thick with decay. The ground trembled beneath you as the roots spread their tendrils deeper, farther, reaching for places that had once been untouched by the fragility of human existence. You were no longer just a witness to this transformation. You were part of it. The root had claimed you as it had claimed everything else. The hunger had seeped deep into your bones, into your very essence. There was no longer any separation between you and the forest. You were the forest, its keeper, its hunger, its eternal will. The once distinct divisions between life and death, between what was natural and what was corrupted, had disappeared. What was left now was simply the endless growth, the cycle of birth and decay that had always been at the core of the earth, only now it was no longer an isolated event. It was an all-encompassing force, as inevitable as the rising sun, as eternal as the soil beneath your feet. The root does not sleep, the figure's voice whispered again, though now it felt even more distant. It no longer felt like a call to you, but like the voice of the earth itself, reaching through time and space to remind you of your place within it. It has always been here, waiting, silent. But now it feeds, it grows, and you will guide it until the end. The words rang in your mind, and you felt the weight of their meaning settle deep within you. Guide it. That was your purpose now. The hunger would never stop. It would consume everything in its path. But You were the keeper, the force that would ensure the root's eternal growth. The endless cycle of life and death would continue, and you would watch it unfold. Your body had changed, reshaped by the forest's will. You no longer had the shape you once did. The roots that had once only whispered in your veins had now become an unbreakable bond. They pulsed with life, wrapping around your heart, your soul, intertwining with every part of you, guiding you through the world. You no longer walked on solid ground, but on the very earth itself, every step taken in unison with the forest's growth. As you wandered through the forest, the trees towering above you like ancient gods, their twisted branches reaching out as if to hold you in their grasp, you felt something shift, something deep, primal. The earth was calling to you, urging you to feed. The hunger within you had grown, feeding on the world that had been consumed. The land had been reborn, yes, but it had not yet been fully claimed. There was still more to consume, more to devour. The air was heavy with the scent of decay and growth, both dead and living. The forest was a contrast, a place where life and death were not opposites but intertwined, where one could not exist without the other. The roots spread like veins beneath your feet, feeding off the remains of what had been, while the trees above you swayed and groaned, twisting their way to the sky. But there was something different now. The hunger was no longer just alive. It was awake, a presence, a being that lived within the forest, in the roots, in the soil. And it was growing, constantly stretching outward, consuming everything in its path. You could feel it, the power, growing inside of you. It was an overwhelming force, a deep, dark hunger that whispered to your very soul, urging you to feed. The roots beneath you, once simply a part of the land, had become something more, something alive, something hungry. You could feel the pulse of it, deep within your chest, beating in time with the earth's own heart. It was not just the land that fed, it was you too. You were one with it, bound by the very roots that stretched through the soil. You will guide the hunger, the voice whispered again, but this time it was different. It was closer, almost as if it were speaking directly to you, no longer distant or ethereal. You will lead it to its final end. You will witness the fall of the world and you will feed it. The forest is eternal. You are eternal. The words hung in the air, thick and suffocating, as the earth continued its unrelenting transformation. The hunger spread like wildfire, breaking through the remnants of the surface, consuming it all, turning it into a dark wasteland of roots and twisted trees. The world that had once been was gone, consumed, erased, and all that remained was the unyielding force of the forest, ever growing, ever hungry. You felt it in your very bones, the desire to feed, to consume, to spread the roots further and further. The hunger would never stop. It would grow and you would guide it. Feed, the voice urged, its whisper barely audible now. Guide the hunger. Let it consume the last remnants of the surface. There is nothing left to fear. There is only the root. And as you stood there, amidst the eternal growth, you understood. There was no escape. There was no going back. You had become the root. You had become the hunger. The world would continue to be devoured, to be reshaped by the eternal, unrelenting force of the forest. There was nothing left but the feeding and the endless growth. The world had fallen. The hunger had won. The world, what was left of it, had become an echo, a fading memory, a shadow of its former self, swallowed whole by the hunger of the root. The trees, massive and twisted, now reached for the sky in dark, jagged spires, their bark peeling away to reveal a deep, blackened core, pulsing with the slow beat of an ancient heart. The air, thick with the scent of earth and decay, felt heavy and oppressive, as though the very atmosphere was suffocating beneath the weight of the forest's endless growth. There was no longer any sense of time, no dawn, no dusk. Just the never-ending dark of the root, spreading endlessly in all directions, consuming everything it touched. You moved through the forest, your every step guided by the unseen force of the earth. The roots pulsed beneath your feet, sending shivers through your body. They had become more than just the foundation of the forest. They were alive, now more like veins, arteries pumping the lifeblood of the forest, spreading outwards, reaching into every corner of the earth. The world was no longer the place it had once been. It had been reclaimed, reshaped, and now there was only the root, the hunger, and the darkening void that surrounded you. The transformation had taken longer than you realized. It felt as though it had been forever since the world had begun to crumble, but now, looking at the landscape around you, you could feel the weight of time pressing against you. The forest had consumed the world, but its hunger was far from satisfied. The air had become thick, laden with moisture, and you could almost taste the decay, the rot, as it clung to the ground, to your skin. Yet there was something more, something deep within the roots, beneath the surface, that was pulling at you, calling you further into the heart of the earth. You are the keeper of the root, the voice whispered, faint but clear in your mind, as though it was part of the wind, part of the earth itself. You have led the hunger to the end of the world. But now there is something new. The hunger is not finished. The words echoed within you, pulling at the deepest parts of your soul, pushing you forward. You were compelled to follow the call of the roots, to sink deeper into the earth. The forest had always been alive, but now it was awake in ways you hadn't understood before. The hunger had always been a part of it, but now it was something more. A force that had taken on a life of its own, reaching for something beyond mere sustenance. It was waiting for something, and you could feel it, a strange, almost unnatural pull that drew you closer to the heart of the root. The ground beneath you trembled once more, but this time it was different. There was a vibration, a pulse that seemed to reverberate through the air, filling the space with a hum that felt like the deep thrum of the earth's heartbeat. It was more than the forest's growth. It was as though the world itself was shifting, transforming into something you could barely comprehend. The trees around you began to move, not like they had before. This time they twisted, their roots rising from the earth like serpents, reaching for the sky, their limbs cracking as if they had been stretched too far. The ground groaned beneath your feet, and you could feel the very soil moving, shifting with an energy you couldn't understand but couldn't deny. The roots were pulling the earth itself into a new shape, shaping it into something far darker, far more unnatural than it had ever been before. The hunger is not satisfied, the voice murmured again, clearer now, though its tone was not one of reassurance. The root has fed, but there is something greater that lies beneath the earth. You are not done. The root has a purpose, and it will not cease until that purpose is fulfilled. You had never felt this kind of tension before. The earth beneath you was no longer just a passive thing, something to be consumed. It was alive with a deep, urgent need, stretching, reaching, pulling everything into it. The air grew thicker, the roots pressing tighter around your legs, crawling up your arms as if they were drawing you in, urging you to go deeper. The hunger inside you, which had once been a gnawing desire, now felt like a fire, a consuming flame that burned within you, driving you forward. The trees groaned louder now, their bark cracking and splintering as the roots split the earth in jagged seams, their tendrils burrowing deeper, dragging the remnants of the surface down into the soil. The forest was no longer just growing, it was changing, evolving. The very shape of the world was being reconstructed, as though the earth itself had decided it no longer wanted to remain the same. The hunger had pushed it to the brink, and now it was remaking itself in the image of the root. The world above had vanished, reduced to rubble, consumed by the forest. But the world below, the deep, hidden heart of the earth, was now being unearthed, and you were its guide, its keeper, drawing you closer to the ancient power that had always slumbered beneath the surface. The very soil felt like it was vibrating with anticipation, as though something ancient and unseen was stirring beneath your feet. The root is not an end, the voice continued, but now, it sounded almost distant, as though it were echoing from the depths of the earth itself. It is a beginning. The surface is lost, but the hunger will spread. It will grow until it reaches the very core of the earth. The world will be transformed, reborn, but it will not be the same. The root has awakened, and now it will consume everything. You could feel it now, deep beneath you, a presence, a force that had been waiting for the right moment. The ground trembled beneath your feet again, but this time it was different. It was as though the earth itself was alive, stirring, awakening from a long slumber. The roots beneath you shifted, twisting like serpents, burrowing deeper into the soil, reaching for something far deeper, something that had always been hidden beneath the surface, a power greater than anything you had ever known. The hunger inside you surged, pulling you forward, urging you to move, to feed the root once more. You were no longer a passive part of the forest. You were the guide, the one who would lead the root into the heart of the earth, to awaken the darkness that had been buried for centuries. The world above had crumbled, and now the world beneath was coming alive, ready to take its place in the endless cycle of growth and destruction. The hunger was no longer just about feeding. It was about awakening something far darker, far older. And as you felt the pulse of the earth beneath you, you knew that you were no longer in control. The root had become everything. It was the world, the air, the ground beneath your feet. And it was pulling you deeper into its core, to witness the final awakening. The roots beneath you moved like living things, twisting and slithering, burrowing deeper into the earth's core with an unnatural urgency. The very land felt as though it was breathing, pulsing with a life that was far older, far darker than you could comprehend. The world above had long since crumbled, reduced to memories and echoes, swept away by the insatiable hunger of the forest. But now, the forest itself seemed to be drawing deeper into the earth, pushing through layers of soil and stone, reaching for something that had been buried for eons. You could feel it deep within your bones, the weight of what was coming. The hunger that had once been a distant, gnawing force had transformed, grown into something more profound, something more ancient. It was no longer about feeding. It was about awakening. The earth had been silent for so long, buried beneath centuries of soil, untouched by the surface world. But now, as the roots pressed deeper, the silence was beginning to crack. You could feel it reverberating through your body, through your very being, a vibration that echoed from the depths. It stirs, the voice whispered, not in your mind now, but within the very earth itself. The heart has awoken. The root has stirred the darkness that sleeps beneath. It was never meant to be this way. It was never meant to come back. The words were like a warning, but they only compelled you further. The hunger, once a mere force of nature, had become something far more intentional, as though it had a will of its own, a desire to consume, to reshape the very foundation of the world. The roots, now thick and powerful, seemed to be pulling you along, urging you forward, urging you deeper into the earth, where the very air was thick with the scent of damp, ancient soil. The land around you had changed. No longer was it the twisted, dark forest that had claimed the surface. The deeper you moved, the more the earth itself shifted, becoming something else entirely. The roots had dug through ancient stone, broken through layers of rock that had been untouched for millennia. The forest was no longer just alive. It had become something else, a force, a presence that seemed to reach back to the beginning of time itself. It was waiting, the voice continued, now resonating through the very ground. The heart beneath the earth was always waiting for the right moment. The root has awakened it. The hunger has summoned it from its slumber. The ground trembled beneath your feet, and the air grew thick as though the earth itself was gasping, drawing in a deep breath. The roots pulsed with an eerie, rhythmic energy, the ground around you softening, becoming more malleable as though it was alive, a part of something that had been forgotten, until now. The deeper you went, the more it felt as if the world was shifting around you, pulling you into its core, into its heart. You could feel the presence now, stronger than ever, a dark and ancient force that pulsed beneath the earth's surface. It was alive and it was awake. The hunger you had felt before had been nothing compared to what now surged through your veins, through the roots, through the earth. This was not just a hunger, it was a call, a beckoning from the heart of the earth, urging you to go further, to awaken what had lain dormant for so long. The earth rumbled as if it were responding to your thoughts, to your presence. The soil beneath you cracked, fissures spreading out from the point where your feet touched the ground. The air smelled like rot, but also something older, something that had not seen the light of the sun for an eternity. The roots twisted, extending farther and farther, curling around boulders, stones, and remnants of a long-forgotten world. The surface was far behind you now. What remained was a world far deeper, far more alien, than anything you had ever known. You are here, the voice whispered again, now growing clearer, sharper. The heart is close. The hunger has awakened it, and now it calls. You are its keeper, its guide. The root has led you here, and the earth will never be the same. The ground split open in front of you, revealing a chasm of blackness, a deep void that seemed to stretch into eternity. The air grew cold, unnaturally so, as though the very warmth of the surface had been left behind. The roots moved faster now, diving into the chasm as though they were trying to anchor something, to hold it in place. But there was no time to question it. You were drawn forward, compelled to move into the darkness, deeper into the earth's hollowed core. As you moved closer, you could see it. A glow, faint at first, but growing steadily brighter as you approached. The glow was not light as you knew it, but something else. Something ancient and pulsing with an energy that sent chills down your spine. The roots converged around it, forming a web that seemed to hum with an unnatural resonance. This was no ordinary force. This was the heart beneath the earth, and it was now awake. The heartbeat of the earth was loud, almost deafening, as if the entire world had taken in a sharp breath, holding it, waiting. You could feel the earth tremble in anticipation, could feel the air charge with electric energy. The roots stretched outward, reaching into the chasm, wrapping around the heart like a mother cradling her child, ready to nourish it. The heart, dark and pulsing, seemed to draw in the very energy of the earth around it, absorbing the roots, absorbing the hunger. It was not a place of life nor of death. It was the very essence of the earth, the force that had been buried beneath the surface, untouched by the light for centuries. And now it was awake, drawn forth by the very hunger that had spread across the land. The hunger has awakened it, the voice said again, now barely a whisper. But this is not the end. It is only the beginning. The heart will feed on the world just as the root has fed, and you will guide it. You will lead the heart to its next stage. The roots tightened their grip around the heart, their dark, twisting tendrils wrapping tighter and tighter, as though preparing to feed it, to give it the life it needed. The air was thick with power, with energy that seemed to stretch and pull in every direction, but focused in this one dark core. The heart beat once more, and you felt the entire world shift beneath you. The earth was changing. The hunger had found its way to its final destination, its ultimate purpose. You were no longer just its guide. You were the vessel. The hunger had consumed the world above, and now it would consume the world below. The heart pulsed again, its rhythm deep, primal, and powerful. It vibrated through the air, reverberating in your bones, a force that could not be denied. The ground trembled beneath you, and the roots, now coiled tightly around the heart, seemed to react as though they were feeding it, nourishing it with the earth's very essence. The heart was no longer a distant presence. It was alive, and it was awakening in ways that defied comprehension. It was pulling the world into itself, drawing everything around it into a deep, intimate connection with the very core of the earth. The forest, the roots, the soil, they were no longer separate. Everything had become intertwined, bound by a singular, all-consuming force. As you stood there, watching the roots thicken and stretch further into the depths, a realization struck you like a bolt of lightning. The hunger had never been just about consuming what was above. It had always been about rebirth, about the earth's renewal. The roots had devoured the surface, but that was only the beginning. The true purpose of the hunger was to reach deeper, to draw on the primal energy hidden in the earth's very heart, to awaken the dark force buried beneath the surface. The roots, now alive in a way that defied description, pulled tighter, burrowing deeper into the earth's crust, wrapping around the heart, which now throbbed with an intensity that could be felt for miles. The air was heavy with a sensation of waiting, a moment suspended between breaths. The earth was holding its breath, as though it were about to give birth to something ancient, something primordial. The heart is awakening, the voice whispered once more, its tone softer now, almost reverent. But it is not just awakening. It is calling. The roots have summoned it, and now it calls to the depths of the earth, to the forces that have always been buried beneath the surface. The hunger has changed the course of the world. It has broken the barriers that kept the earth in balance. The roots, as they wrapped around the heart, seemed to pulse with the rhythm of the earth's own breathing, each beat growing stronger, louder, until it seemed like the earth itself was speaking to you. The hunger had been a force that had taken over the surface, but now, its reach extended beneath into the very core of the earth. And here at the center you stood, connected, bound to the heart and to the world itself. The ground around you rumbled again, this time more violently, as if the earth was shaking off its old skin. The trees above you groaned as though in pain, their branches twisting unnaturally, as if the roots' hunger was tearing at the fabric of the world, pulling it apart, remaking it. And beneath you, the heartbeat of the earth grew louder, more powerful, each thump reverberating in your chest, until it was impossible to distinguish where the earth's pulse ended and yours began. You were now part of the earth's essence, just as the root was part of you. The world has been remade, the voice continued, now almost a chant, echoing in the air around you. The surface is no more. The roots have consumed all, and now the heart will feed. The hunger will not end. It will continue, growing deeper, reaching further, until it has transformed everything. It is a new age, and you, the keeper, will guide it. The ground before you split open once more, revealing a dark chasm, a deep void that seemed to stretch endlessly. The roots plunged into the chasm, disappearing into the blackness, and as they did, you could feel the very core of the earth shifting, its ancient energy flowing upward, like the pulse of a god awakening from a long-forgotten slumber. The air grew heavy with the force of it, thick with power that seemed to seep into your very soul. The hunger had not simply fed, it had changed. The heart that had lain dormant for millennia was now awake, and its power was undeniable. The earth was not just alive, it was remaking itself, reshaping, evolving in ways that no one had ever imagined. And as the roots continued to spread, as the earth's heart continued to beat, you understood that there was no returning to what had been. The surface world, the world that had existed before, was gone, consumed by the forest's insatiable hunger. But this new world, this dark, reborn earth, was something else entirely. The hunger had only just begun. You could feel it inside you, gnawing at your bones, pulling at your very essence. It was no longer just a force of destruction. It was a creation, a transformation. The root, the hunger, had a purpose beyond consumption. It was the catalyst for an earth reborn, for a new world. The heart pulsed again, and you felt it deep in your chest. You were no longer the person you had once been. The root had changed you. The hunger had consumed you, reshaped you, and now you were as much a part of the earth as the roots themselves. The forest had swallowed everything that once existed. The surface was no more, and the earth had taken its place. You will guide the heart, the voice whispered now, resonating from all directions, filling the space around you, binding you to the world itself. You will feed it. You will nourish it. The heart will grow, and it will become the new world. And you, as its keeper, will walk its path. The earth rumbled one last time, the vibrations reverberating through the very marrow of your bones, and the darkness around you deepened. The roots reached deep into the earth's core, intertwining with the ancient heart, and the world shifted once more. What had once been a world of surface and sky, of light and life, was now a place of darkness and growth, an endless cycle of hunger, transformation, and rebirth. You stood at the center of it all, no longer just a witness to the destruction, but the one who had set the world on its new path. The hunger had changed you, and now you were its keeper, its vessel. The earth had no end, no beginning. It simply was. And you were its guide, its heartbeat.